You murdered sister and made my mother and other sister die. You're a monster.
How can you be so complicit? My son was your best friend, for God's sake.
You are a monster. I had never encountered evil like yours.
It is the order of this court that on the charge of murder, I sentence you to death by electrocution.
Please, no.
You're a
caused the death
monster!
of 3 members of a family of 5 at once!
The courtroom fell into a silence so thick you could taste it. Judge Margaret Holloway, a woman who had presided over 3 decades of murders, rapes, and unspeakable violence, sat rigid in her chair, her hands trembling as they gripped the edge of the bench. Her eyes, red and swollen, locked onto the young man standing before her in shackles. 18 years old, baby-faced, the kind of kid you'd see bagging groceries or mowing lawns on a Sunday afternoon. But what he had done to that innocent woman. "You are a monster," Judge Holloway whispered, her voice cracking. The microphone barely caught it. "In 32 years on this bench, I have never encountered evil like yours." The defendant, Marcus Whitmore, stood motionless. No tears, no remorse, just cold, dead eyes staring back at her. "You butchered her like an animal," the judge continued, her voice rising now, echoing off the wood-paneled walls. "You dismembered her so savagely that her own mother couldn't identify her body. You stole from her. You lied to her family. You used her phone to send messages while her blood was still on your hands." A sob broke out from the gallery. The victim's father collapsed into his seat, held up only by the trembling arms of his only surviving son. Judge Holloway stood, something she rarely did during sentencing. Her robe seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. "The state of Virginia has found you guilty of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. The jury has recommended death. And I..." She paused, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I agree wholeheartedly." The courtroom erupted. Screams. Cries. A woman fainted in the back row. "Marcus Elijah Whitmore," Judge Holloway declared, her voice now steady and cold as winter steel, "I hereby sentence you to death by electrocution. May God have mercy on your soul, because you deserve none from this earth." But this story doesn't begin in that courtroom. It begins with an act of kindness. Welcome back to Dark Echoes Crime, where we uncover the most disturbing true crime cases that haunt our justice system and shatter innocent lives. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the story you're about to hear will leave you questioning how a single good deed can unravel into absolute horror. This is the story of how kindness killed an entire family. Let's begin. Liam Ashford and Marcus Whitmore had been best friends since the age of 7. They grew up in the working-class neighborhood of Riverside, Virginia, a place where kids played street hockey until the streetlights came on, where neighbors knew each other's names, and where families struggled but stuck together. It was the kind of place where your word meant something. Where loyalty wasn't just expected, it was woven into the fabric of everyday life. Liam's family wasn't wealthy, but they were stable. His father, Gerald Ashford, worked long hours as a foreman at a textile factory. His mother, Catherine, was a school cafeteria manager who somehow always had enough love and lasagna to feed half the neighborhood. Liam had 2 sisters, Vanessa, the eldest, who was 8 years older than him, and Emily, who was 6 years older. Vanessa Ashford was the crown jewel of the family. At 26 years old, she had built something remarkable, a boutique vintage clothing shop called Timeless Threads in downtown Richmond. The shop had become wildly popular among college students and young professionals looking for unique, one-of-a-kind pieces. Vanessa had an eye for fashion that bordered on supernatural. She could spot a valuable 1960s Chanel jacket buried under a pile of moth-eaten sweaters at an estate sale from 50 feet away. She was also stunningly beautiful, long chestnut hair, bright green eyes, a smile that could light up a room. But more than her looks, it was her kindness that people remembered. Vanessa had a softness about her, a genuine warmth that made people feel seen and valued. Emily, on the other hand, was fighting her own private war. At 24, she had been diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. The treatments were brutal, chemotherapy sessions that left her weak and nauseated, radiation that burned her skin, and a future that looked increasingly uncertain. But Emily was a fighter. She refused to let the disease define her, throwing herself into painting and poetry as a way to process her fear and pain. And then there was Liam. 18 years old, fresh out of high school, working as an assistant manager at a local hardware store. Liam was the glue that held everyone together, the peacemaker, the optimist, the guy who always saw the best in people. Especially Marcus Whitmore. Marcus came from a different world entirely. His father had disappeared before he was born, and his mother, Paula Whitmore, was a functioning alcoholic who worked sporadically as a housekeeper. They lived in a cramped apartment that always smelled like cigarette smoke and desperation. There was never enough food. Never enough heat in the winter. Never enough of anything. But Marcus had Liam. From the time they were kids, Liam's family had unofficially adopted Marcus. He ate dinner at their table more nights than not. He slept over so often that Catherine had bought him his own toothbrush and kept it in a cup by the bathroom sink. When Marcus's mother disappeared for days on a bender, it was Gerald who tracked her down and made sure Marcus had a safe place to sleep. "Your family," Catherine would tell Marcus, ruffling his hair. "Always." And Marcus had believed it. But as they grew older, the gap between their lives widened. Liam had a future. Plans to go to community college, maybe become an engineer. Marcus had nothing. He'd barely graduated high school, scraping by with DS and the occasional C. He had no skills, no prospects, no path forward. By the time they turned 18, Marcus was unemployed and desperate. He'd applied to dozens of jobs, fast food, retail, warehouse work, and been rejected by all of them. His mother had stopped paying rent, and they were weeks away from eviction. Liam watched his best friend spiral into despair and made a decision. He would help him, just like his family had always done. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late March when Liam approached Vanessa. She was in the back room of Timeless Threads, carefully steaming wrinkles out of a 1970s maxi dress. The shop was quiet, just the hiss of the steamer and the soft jazz playing through the speakers. "Hey V," Liam said, leaning against the doorframe. "Got a minute?" Vanessa looked up and smiled. "For my favorite baby brother?" "Always. I'm your only brother." Details. She hung the dress on a rack and turned to face him. "What's up?" Liam hesitated. He knew this was a big ask. "It's about Marcus." Vanessa's smile faded slightly. Not because she disliked Marcus, she didn't, but because she knew what was coming. "He's in a bad spot," Liam continued. "Like really bad. He's about to lose his apartment. He can't find work. His mom's." He trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. "I know," Vanessa said softly. "I was thinking, maybe you could give him a job? Here at the shop? Just something part-time. Enough to help him get back on his feet." Vanessa bit her lip, considering. The shop was doing well, but she didn't really need extra help. She'd been managing just fine on her own, with occasional assistance from a college student named Becca who worked weekends. But she saw the desperation in her brother's eyes. The hope. And, Liam added, he needs a place to stay. Just temporarily. A few weeks, maybe a month. Until he saves enough for a deposit on a new place. "Liam? I know it's a lot to ask," he said quickly. "But he's got nowhere else to go. And I can't let him end up on the street. He's my best friend." Vanessa closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. She lived alone in a modest two-bedroom apartment above a pizzeria, about 10 minutes from the shop. The second bedroom was barely bigger than a closet, filled with storage boxes and racks of overflow inventory. But it had a bed. And a door that locked. She thought about all the times Marcus had sat at their dinner table as a kid, quiet and grateful, his eyes lighting up when her mom served seconds. She thought about how Liam had always been there for her when she was applying to business loans, helping her move inventory, painting the shop walls at 2 in the morning because they couldn't afford to hire professionals. How could she say no? "Okay," Vanessa said finally. "But I need to set some ground rules." Liam's face broke into a grin. "Anything. Thank you, V, seriously. You're saving his life." If only he had known. Marcus Whitmore moved into Vanessa's apartment on April 2nd, carrying everything he owned in 2 garbage bags and a backpack. Vanessa met him at the door with a warm smile and a set of keys. "Welcome," she said. "Let me show you around." The apartment was small but cozy. The living room had a worn leather couch, a coffee table covered in fashion magazines, and a small TV mounted on the wall. The kitchen was barely big enough for one person, with a 2-burner stove and a mini fridge that hummed constantly. Vanessa's bedroom was off-limits, but she showed Marcus the second bedroom, a narrow space with a twin bed, a small dresser, and a window overlooking the alley behind the pizzeria. "It's not much," Vanessa said apologetically. "It's perfect," Marcus replied, and for a moment, there was genuine gratitude in his voice. They went over the rules. Keep the place clean. No overnight guests. No drugs or alcohol. Be respectful. Pay $200 a month once he started getting paychecks. Not much, but enough to help with utilities. Marcus agreed to everything. The next morning he started working at Timeless Threads. At first, everything seemed fine. Marcus was punctual, polite, and hard-working. Vanessa trained him on the register, showed him how to organize inventory by decade and style, taught him how to spot quality fabrics and hidden damage. He picked things up quickly and customers seemed to like him. "You're really good with people," Vanessa told him after his first week. "You should be proud of yourself." Marcus smiled, but there was something behind his eyes she couldn't quite read. What Vanessa didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Marcus Whitmore had learned a very different set of skills growing up. He had learned how to lie, how to manipulate, how to take what he wanted when no one was looking. He had learned how to survive. And survival in Marcus's world meant looking out for number one. It started small. A $20 bill missing from the cash register. Vanessa noticed it during her nightly count but assumed she'd made a mistake. Maybe she'd given someone incorrect change. Maybe she'd forgotten to record a return. Then it happened again. $50 this time. Then $100. Vanessa started paying closer attention. She began marking the bills in the register with a small dot of red ink on the corner, a trick her father had taught her years ago. 2 days later, 3 of the marked bills were gone. But it wasn't just cash. Vanessa kept detailed records of her inventory. Every piece that came in was photographed, cataloged, and entered into a spreadsheet. She prided herself on her organization. So when a vintage Hermes scarf, worth $800, went missing, she knew immediately. She checked the sales records. Nothing. She checked the back room. Gone. A sick feeling settled in her stomach. It couldn't be Marcus, could it? She didn't want to believe it. This was Liam's best friend. This was the kid her family had fed and sheltered for years. This was someone they trusted. But the evidence was mounting. Over the next 2 months, more items disappeared. A Burberry trench coat. A pair of vintage Levi's 500 ones. A 1980s Gucci handbag. Vanessa began conducting inventory checks every single day, and every single day she found discrepancies. She also started noticing irregularities in the books. Transactions that didn't match up. Cash sales that were never deposited. Refunds for items that were never returned. Someone was stealing from her. Systematically. Cleverly. And the only person with access besides her was Marcus. Vanessa felt her world tilt. She wanted to confront him immediately to demand answers. But she also knew that would blow up her relationship with Liam. Her brother would be devastated. He'd feel betrayed, guilty, responsible. So she did what she always did, she tried to handle it quietly. She started watching Marcus more closely. She installed a small security camera behind the register, angled so it captured the cash drawer. She began doing random spot checks of his pockets and backpack before he left for the day, under the guise of making sure no merchandise accidentally got mixed in with your stuff. Marcus played along, always smiling, always cooperative. But Vanessa could feel it, the shift in energy. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The coldness in his eyes. By June, Vanessa had documented over $30,000 in missing cash and inventory. $30,000. She finally broke down and confided in 2 people. Marcus's landlord's sister, Helena Pritchard, who owned a jewelry shop 3 doors down, and Jonathan Crane, who ran an antique furniture store across the street. Both of them had been in business for decades and had dealt with employee theft before. "You need to confront him," Helena said bluntly. "And you need backup." "What kind of backup?" Vanessa asked. "Military police," Jonathan suggested. His son was stationed at Fort Lee about 30 minutes away. They can send a couple of MPs to sit in during the confrontation. Not to arrest him, just to intimidate him. Scare him into confessing and returning the money. Vanessa hesitated. "I don't want to get him arrested. I just want the money back." "Then make that clear," Helena said. "Tell him if he returns everything and leaves quietly, you won't press charges. But you need witnesses. You need people there who can keep him from lying his way out of it." Vanessa agreed. They scheduled the meeting for July 14th, a Thursday afternoon. Vanessa would close the shop early. Helena and Jonathan would be there, along with 2 military officers who owed Jonathan a favor. It was supposed to be simple, professional, controlled. But fate had other plans. July 14th dawned hot and sticky, the kind of oppressive summer heat that made the air feel like soup. Vanessa woke up with a knot in her stomach. Today was the day. She'd rehearsed what she was going to say 100 times. She'd organized all her evidence. Photos, spreadsheets, receipts, camera footage. She was ready. Marcus arrived at the shop at 9 a.m., same as always. He seemed relaxed, even cheerful, chatting about a movie he'd watched the night before. Vanessa forced herself to act normal. She couldn't let him suspect anything. At 2 p.m. she flipped the sign on the door to closed and locked it. "What's going on?" Marcus asked, looking confused. "We need to talk," Vanessa said quietly. "Helena and Jonathan are coming over. And some other people." Marcus's expression shifted. Just for a second she saw something flicker across his face. Fear, anger, calculation. Then it was gone, replaced by wide-eyed innocence. "Talk about what?" he asked. Before Vanessa could answer, there was a knock at the door. She let in Helena and Jonathan, followed by two stern-looking men in military police uniforms, Sergeant David Carver and Corporal Luis Martinez. The shop suddenly felt very small. "Marcus," Helena began, "we're here because there have been some serious financial discrepancies." At that exact moment, Vanessa's phone rang. It was Emily. Vanessa almost ignored it, but something made her answer. I'm kind of in the middle of... It hurts." Emily's scream was so loud everyone in the shop could hear it. "Nessa, it hurts so bad I can't." Vanessa's blood turned to ice. "What's happening? Where are you?" "Home, the pain, my stomach, and Mom can't wake up." The phone clattered, and Vanessa heard her mother's voice in the background, panicked and shrill. "I'm calling 911. Hold on, baby, hold on." Vanessa looked at Helena, her face white. "It's Emily. Something's wrong. I have to go." "Vanessa, we're in the middle of... My sister is dying." Vanessa shouted, tears streaming down her face. She turned to Marcus. "We'll finish this later. Don't go anywhere." She grabbed her purse and ran out the door, leaving everyone standing in shocked silence. Sergeant Carver cleared his throat. "We should probably reschedule." "No," Jonathan said firmly, turning to Marcus. "Let's do this now. Marcus, we have evidence that you've been stealing from Vanessa. A lot. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars." Marcus's face remained blank. "I don't know what you're talking about." "We have camera footage," Helena added. "We have inventory records." "We have." "You have nothing," Marcus interrupted, his voice eerily calm. "And even if you did, Vanessa's not here to say anything. So unless you're arresting me, which you can't because you have no actual proof, I'm leaving." He walked toward the door. "Marcus," Jonathan started. "Touch me and I'll have you arrested for assault," Marcus said coldly. "Have a great day." He walked out into the blazing July sun, leaving 4 stunned adults in his wake. Vanessa drove like a woman possessed, weaving through traffic, running 2 red lights, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the wheel. She arrived at Richmond General Hospital 20 minutes later and sprinted into the emergency room. Catherine Ashford was in the waiting area, her face streaked with tears, her hands clasped in prayer. "Mom?" Vanessa gasped. "What happened?" "They took her back," Catherine sobbed. "She was in so much pain, Nessa." She was screaming. "I've never heard her scream like that." Vanessa held her mother, both of them trembling. A doctor emerged 2 hours later, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes and gray hair. "Mrs. Ashford? I'm Dr. Patel. Your daughter Emily is stable for now, but I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The cancer has spread more aggressively than we anticipated. It's in her liver, her lungs. We're looking at weeks, maybe a couple of months." Catherine let out a sound that wasn't quite human, a wail of pure grief that echoed through the waiting room. Vanessa felt her knees buckle. She sat down hard on a plastic chair, her mind reeling. Emily was dying. Her baby sister was dying. And she just left the shop in the middle of confronting a thief because of this crisis. Vanessa didn't think about Marcus for the rest of the day. She didn't think about the missing money or the confrontation or any of it. All she could think about was Emily's face, pale and drawn, her eyes fluttering open as the pain medication kicked in. "Hey V," Emily whispered. "Sorry I ruined your day." "Don't you dare apologize," Vanessa said, kissing her sister's forehead. "I love you. We're going to get through this." Emily smiled weakly. "You're a terrible liar." They stayed at the hospital until midnight. Gerald arrived straight from his shift at the factory, still wearing his work boots and covered in lint. Liam was out of town. He'd taken a temporary job in North Carolina, helping set up a new hardware distribution center. The pay was incredible, and the plan was for him to work there for 3 months, save up, and then help Vanessa expand Timeless Threads into a second location. Catherine tried calling him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She left a message. "Liam, honey, it's Mom. Emily's in the hospital. It's bad. Call me as soon as you get this." But Liam was in a dead zone, working a 16-hour shift, his phone buried in his locker. He wouldn't get the message for 2 more days. By then, everything would be different. Vanessa returned to her apartment at 1:30 a.m., emotionally shattered and physically exhausted. She'd forgotten all about Marcus, until she opened the door and saw him sitting on her couch in the dark. Jesus! Vanessa jumped, her heart hammering. You scared the hell out of me. What are you doing up? Marcus didn't answer right away. He just sat there, his face illuminated by the streetlight filtering through the window. Is your sister okay? He finally asked. No, Vanessa said quietly, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. She's not. The cancer's spreading. They're saying weeks. I'm sorry. There was something about the way he said it, flat, emotionless, that made Vanessa's skin crawl. Marcus, we need to talk about today, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. About the shop. About the money. There's nothing to talk about. There's $30,000 missing. Prove it. Vanessa stared at him. Excuse me? Marcus stood up slowly. Even though he was only 5'9" and rail-thin, there was something menacing about the way he moved. Like a snake uncoiling. You accused me in front of those people, Marcus said softly. You humiliated me. You brought cops. They weren't there to arrest you. They were there to scare me, Marcus finished. Yeah, I figured that out. But here's the thing, Vanessa. You don't have proof. You have theories. You have suspicions. But you don't have proof that would hold up in court. I have camera footage. Of what? Me working the register? Me organizing inventory? Big deal. Marcus took a step closer. You really think a judge is going to convict me based on some grainy video and your word against mine? Vanessa's hands started shaking. She'd never seen this side of Marcus before. This cold, calculating version of the boy who'd sat at her family's dinner table. I want you out, Vanessa said, her voice barely above a whisper. Tomorrow. Pack your things and leave. Marcus smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Fine, he said. But you need to think very carefully about what you do next. Because if you go to the police, if you try to press charges, I'll make sure Liam knows this is all your fault. That you kicked his best friend out onto the street when he had nowhere to go. That you destroyed our friendship because of your paranoia. Vanessa felt tears burning her eyes. Get out of my apartment. Now. Marcus shrugged. I'm going to bed. We can finish this conversation tomorrow. He walked past her into the small bedroom and closed the door. Vanessa stood in the kitchen, trembling with rage and fear and exhaustion. She wanted to call the police right then. She wanted to drag him out of her apartment by his hair. But she was so tired. So emotionally wrung out from the hospital. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow I'll handle this. She went into her bedroom, locked the door, and collapsed onto her bed still fully clothed. It was the last decision she ever made. What happened in those early morning hours of July 15th was reconstructed later through forensic evidence, blood spatter analysis, and Marcus Whitmore's eventual confession. At approximately 3:15 a.m., Marcus lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He was trapped. Exposed. Everything was falling apart. If Vanessa went to the police, he was done. Even without concrete proof, the investigation would reveal everything. They'd trace the money. They'd find the pawn shops where he'd sold the stolen merchandise. They'd discover his burner phone and the buyer contacts he'd been cultivating. He'd go to prison. He couldn't let that happen. Marcus got out of bed and walked quietly to the kitchen. Vanessa's bedroom door was closed, a sliver of light visible underneath. She'd fallen asleep with the lamp on. He opened the drawer next to the sink. Vanessa kept her kitchen knives there, a set of cheap but sharp blades she'd gotten at Target. Marcus selected the largest one, a chef's knife with an 8-inch blade. He tested the weight in his hand, considered his options. He could run, disappear, start over somewhere else. But Vanessa knew his real name. She had his social security number from the employment paperwork. She could find him. She could ruin him. No, there was only one way this could end. Marcus walked to Vanessa's bedroom door and tried the handle. Locked. He knocked softly. Vanessa? You awake? No response. He knocked again, a little louder. Vanessa? I can't sleep. Can we talk? Inside the bedroom, Vanessa stirred. She'd been in that twilight state between sleep and waking, her mind still processing the day's trauma. Marcus, she mumbled. It's 3 a.m. I know. I'm sorry. But I need to talk to you. About the money. About everything. Please. Vanessa sat up, rubbing her eyes. Part of her wanted to tell him to go to hell. But another part, the part that still saw him as that scared little kid who used to eat cereal at their breakfast table, felt a pang of sympathy. Maybe he was ready to confess. Maybe he wanted to make things right. She unlocked the door and opened it. Marcus was standing there in a t-shirt and sweatpants, his hands behind his back. "What do you want to talk about?" Vanessa asked, her voice thick with exhaustion. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "For everything. For stealing. For lying. You were right about all of it." Vanessa felt a wave of relief wash over her. Okay, we can figure this out. If you pay me back." "I can't pay you back," Marcus interrupted. "I spent it. All of it. Most of it. There's maybe 2,000 left." Vanessa's relief evaporated. "Marcus, that's $30,000. What did you spend it on?" "Drugs," Marcus lied smoothly. "I got into some bad stuff. Oxy. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." It was a calculated lie. Marcus had never touched drugs in his life. He'd seen what they did to his mother. But he knew it was a believable explanation. Tragic. Sympathetic. The kind of thing that might make Vanessa hesitate before calling the police. Vanessa sank back onto her bed, her head in her hands. "Oh my God, Marcus. We could have gotten you help. We could have." That's when Marcus brought the knife out from behind his back. Vanessa saw the blade catch the lamplight and jerked backward, her eyes going wide with terror. "Marcus, what are you?" He lunged. The first stab hit her in the upper chest, the blade sliding between her ribs with a sickening crunch. Vanessa screamed, a high, piercing sound that turned into a gurgle as blood filled her lungs. She tried to fight back, clawing at Marcus's face, leaving deep scratches down his cheek. But he was stronger, fueled by adrenaline and desperation. The second stab hit her throat. The third hit her stomach. The fourth. The fifth. The sixth. Marcus stabbed her 23 times in total. By the time he stopped, Vanessa Ashford was unrecognizable. Blood covered the bed, the walls, the carpet. It pooled beneath her body in a dark, spreading stain. Marcus stood there, breathing hard, the knife slippery in his hand. What have I done? The thought flashed through his mind for just a second. Then survival instinct kicked in. He couldn't undo this. But he could hide it. He could make her disappear. Marcus spent the next 4 hours in a state of mechanical focus, his mind cold and calculating. First, he dragged Vanessa's body into the bathroom. The blood trail across the carpet was horrific, but he'd deal with that later. He laid her in the bathtub and spent 2 hours dismembering her corpse with the kitchen knives and a hacksaw he found in the hall closet. The details of what he did are too graphic to fully describe here. But by the time he was finished, Vanessa Ashford's body was in 9 separate pieces, wrapped in garbage bags, and stuffed into 2 large duffel bags he'd found in her closet. Marcus showered, scrubbing the blood off his skin until it ran clear. He burned his bloody clothes in the alley behind the apartment, dousing them with lighter fluid and watching them turn to ash. Then he went to work on the apartment. He used bleach and hydrogen peroxide to clean the blood. He scrubbed the bathroom tile until his hands bled. He shampooed the bedroom carpet 3 times. He wiped down every surface, every doorknob, every light switch. By 7 a.m. the apartment looked almost normal. Not perfect. There were still faint stains on the bedroom carpet, and if you looked closely you could see spots on the bathroom grout. But to a casual observer, nothing seemed wrong. Marcus loaded the duffel bags into Vanessa's car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic parked on the street. He drove to a wooded area outside the city, a place he'd gone hiking with Liam as teenagers. There was a ravine there, steep and heavily overgrown, the kind of place hikers avoided. He carried the bags down into the ravine, struggling with the weight, sweating despite the early morning chill. He found a spot beneath a fallen tree, dug a shallow grave with his hands and a stick, and buried the bags. Then he covered them with leaves and branches until the area looked undisturbed. Marcus stood there for a long moment, staring at the spot. This is where she ends, he thought. This is where Vanessa Ashford disappears forever. He drove back to the apartment, parked the car in its usual spot, and went inside. He made himself breakfast, eggs and toast, as if it were just another normal day. Then he picked up Vanessa's phone. This is where Marcus Whitmore's plan became truly diabolical. Vanessa's phone was still on, still unlocked. Marcus had watched her enter her passcode dozens of times. It was her birthday, 0418. He scrolled through her messages, her emails, her social media. He studied her writing style, her emoji usage, the way she signed off on texts. Then he started creating a fiction. First, he texted Helena Pritchard. "Hey Helena, I'm so sorry about yesterday. With everything happening with Emily, I need to take some time off. Going to stay with a friend in DC for a week or 2. Can you keep an eye on the shop? I'll explain everything later. Thank you. B." Helena responded immediately. "Of course. Take all the time you need." Praying for Emily. Next, he texted Jonathan Crane. Jonathan, I'm taking a break. Family emergency. We'll be in touch soon. Then he crafted the most important message, the one to Liam. Marcus had access to Liam's number from Vanessa's contacts. He knew Liam was in North Carolina, out of town, unreachable. Liam, don't freak out. I need to get away for a bit. Everything with Emily has me messed up. Going to visit some friends in DC. We'll call you in a few days. Love you. B. Then Marcus did something even more clever. He posted on Vanessa's Instagram a photo from her camera roll, a picture of a coffee cup with latte art. Taking some personal time. Be back soon. To heart. The comments rolled in immediately. Sending love. Take care of yourself. We're here if you need anything. Marcus smiled. He bought himself time. Over the next 3 days, Marcus continued the charade. He sent occasional texts from Vanessa's phone. He responded to customer inquiries. He even posted another Instagram story, a sunset photo with the caption "Needed this." Meanwhile, he went back to timeless threads and continued stealing. With Vanessa away, Marcus had complete access to the shop. He told Helena and Jonathan that Vanessa had given him the keys and asked him to hold down the fort while she dealt with family matters. They believed him. Why wouldn't they? He seemed genuinely concerned, genuinely helpful. She's going through so much, Marcus told Helena, shaking his head sadly. I just want to make this easier for her. Helena patted his shoulder. You're a good friend, Marcus. She's lucky to have you. If only she knew. Over the next week, Marcus methodically looted timeless threads. He took the most valuable items, designer handbags, vintage jewelry, rare pieces from the 1950s and 60s that Vanessa had spent years collecting. He loaded them into boxes and drove them to pawn shops in 3 different cities, using fake names and paying cash. He cleaned out the safe in Vanessa's office, taking another $8,000 in cash she'd been saving for inventory purchases. He transferred money from the shop's bank account to his own, disguising the transactions as vendor payments and supply orders. By July 22, 1 week after Vanessa's murder, Marcus had stolen an additional $47,000 in cash and merchandise. He felt invincible, untouchable. But cracks were starting to form in his perfect plan. Catherine Ashford tried calling Vanessa repeatedly. The calls went to voicemail. She left tearful messages. Honey, please call me back. I need to hear your voice. Emily's asking about you. Gerald Ashford drove to Vanessa's apartment and knocked on the door. Marcus answered, looking surprised. Mr. Ashford, what are you doing here? I'm looking for Vanessa, Gerald said, his face drawn and tired. Catherine's worried sick. She's not answering her phone. She's in DC, Marcus said smoothly. Staying with friends. She needed a break from everything happening with Emily. She told me she'd call you guys when she was ready. Gerald frowned. That doesn't sound like Vanessa. She wouldn't just disappear, especially not now. She's going through a lot, Marcus said, injecting concern into his voice. I think she's overwhelmed, but I'm sure she'll reach out soon. Gerald wanted to believe him, but something felt wrong. Why are you at her apartment? Gerald asked. She asked me to water her plants and check her mail, Marcus lied. She gave me a key. It was plausible, reasonable. But Gerald left feeling uneasy. That night he told Catherine, something's not right. I can feel it. Should we call the police? Catherine asked. And tell them what? That our adult daughter went to visit friends and isn't answering her phone? They'll laugh at us. So they waited. And Marcus continued his deception. Liam Ashford returned to Virginia on July 24, 9 days after his sister's murder. He'd been unreachable for most of his time in North Carolina, working brutal 16-hour shifts in a warehouse with spotty cell service. When he finally got his mother's messages about Emily, he immediately requested time off and drove straight through the night, arriving home at 6 a.m. He went directly to the hospital. Emily was in the ICU now, barely conscious, her body ravaged by cancer and the aggressive treatments that were no longer working. Catherine and Gerald sat by her bedside, holding vigil. When Liam walked in, Catherine collapsed into his arms, sobbing. Where's Vanessa? Liam asked, looking around the room. I texted her. She said she'd meet me here. Catherine and Gerald exchanged a look. She's in DC, Gerald said quietly. Supposedly. What do you mean, supposedly? No one's heard from her in over a week, Catherine said, her voice cracking. She's not answering calls. Your father went to her apartment, and Marcus said she's staying with friends, but what? Liam felt ice forming in his stomach. It doesn't feel right, Gerald said. Vanessa wouldn't disappear like this. Not with Emily in the hospital. Liam pulled out his phone and scrolled through his texts with Vanessa. The messages were there, casual, reassuring. But something about them felt off. He couldn't put his finger on it. The words were right. The tone was mostly right. But there was something sterile about them. Something lacking Vanessa's usual warmth. "I'm going to the shop," Liam said abruptly. "Liam, stay with your sister. I'll be back in an hour. I promise. I just need to check on something." He drove to Timeless Threads and found Marcus inside, organizing a rack of 1970s blazers. "Liam." Marcus's face lit up with what looked like genuine happiness. "Dude, when did you get back?" "This morning." Liam looked around the shop. Something felt wrong here too, though he couldn't identify what. "Where's Vanessa?" "DC, I thought you knew. She told me she'd be back by now." Marcus shrugged. "She extended her trip. She texted me yesterday and said she's staying with her friend Rachel for another week." "Rachel Winters?" "Yeah, I think that's her name." Liam pulled out his phone and called Rachel Winters, one of Vanessa's college friends who lived in Alexandria. Rachel answered on the second ring. "Liam. How are you?" "Hey Rach. Quick question, is Vanessa staying with you?" Silence. "What? No. I haven't seen Vanessa in like 6 months." "Why?" Liam's blood turned cold. "She told people she was staying with a friend in DC. I assumed it was you. I haven't heard from her at all. Is everything okay?" Liam hung up without answering. He turned to Marcus slowly. "She's not in DC. What are you talking about?" "I just called Rachel. Vanessa's not there. She hasn't seen her." Marcus's expression remained neutral, but Liam saw something flicker in his eyes. Something dark. "Maybe she's staying with someone else," Marcus said. "She has other friends." "Who?" "I don't know, man. She didn't give me a full itinerary." Liam stepped closer, his voice dropping. "What did you do?" "What?" "You heard me. What did you do?" Marcus held up his hands. "Dude, you're freaking out. I didn't do anything. Vanessa left town. That's it." "Then why did she tell you she was staying with Rachel when she's not?" "Maybe she changed plans. Maybe she lied because she wanted privacy." "How should I know?" Liam wanted to punch him. Every instinct in his body was screaming that something was horribly, catastrophically wrong. But he had no proof. Just a gut feeling and some inconsistent stories. "I'm calling the police," Liam said. "And telling them what? That your sister is on vacation and not checking in enough? Come on, man. Use your head." Liam pulled out his phone anyway. Marcus watched him, his jaw clenched. Detective Sarah Brennan of the Richmond Police Department took Liam's missing person report at 11 a.m. on July 24th. She was a 15-year veteran, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who had handled hundreds of missing person cases. Most of them ended with the missing person turning up safe and sound, having simply needed space from their family. But something about Liam Ashford's report caught her attention. "Walk me through the timeline again," Detective Brennan said, her pen poised over her notepad. Liam explained everything: Emily's cancer, the confrontation at the shop, Vanessa's supposed trip to DC, the inconsistencies in the story. "And you said Marcus Whitmore is staying at her apartment?" "He was. I don't know if he still is." "What's your relationship with Mr. Whitmore?" "He's my best friend. Or, he was." Liam's voice cracked. "I got him the job with Vanessa. I asked her to take him in. If something happened to her because of him?" Detective Brennan saw the guilt and terror in the young man's eyes. "Let's not jump to conclusions," she said gently. "But I'll look into it. Can you give me access to your sister's apartment?" "I have a key." "Good. Let's go." They drove to Vanessa's apartment together. Marcus wasn't there, he was at the shop. Detective Brennan walked through the small apartment slowly, her trained eyes scanning everything. Liam followed, his heart pounding. The place looked normal. Clean. Maybe a little too clean. Brennan knelt down and examined the bedroom carpet. Even though Marcus had shampooed it repeatedly, there were still faint discolorations, the kind that suggested someone had tried very hard to remove stains. "Has your sister redecorated recently?" Brennan asked. "What? No. Why?" "This carpet's been cleaned. Professionally, or at least very thoroughly. Multiple times by the look of it." She moved to the bathroom and examined the grout between the tiles. More discoloration. She ran a cotton swab along the grout line and bagged it. "What is that?" Liam asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Possibly nothing. Possibly blood residue. We'll test it." Liam felt the room tilt. He grabbed the door frame to steady himself. Brennan continued her examination. She checked the kitchen, the living room, the closets. In the hall closet, she found cleaning supplies, bleach, hydrogen peroxide, rubber gloves. Not unusual on their own, but combined with the carpet stains. "I'm going to need to bring in forensics," Brennan said. "And I need to talk to Marcus Whitmore. Now." Detective Brennan and her partner, Detective Michael Torres, brought Marcus in for questioning at 3 p.m. that afternoon. They didn't arrest him. They didn't have enough evidence yet. But they strongly invited him to come to the station to help with their investigation. Marcus agreed, playing the role of the concerned friend. The interrogation room was small and windowless, with cinder block walls painted an industrial beige. A table. 3 chairs. A camera mounted in the corner. Marcus sat down, trying to look relaxed. "Can I get you anything?" Detective Torres asked. He was the good cop, mid-30s, friendly smile, casual demeanor. "Water? Coffee? I'm good, thanks." "Great. So, Marcus, we're just trying to figure out where Vanessa Ashford is. You were the last person to see her, right?" "I guess so. She left for DC on July 15th, around noon." "Did she tell you she was going?" "Yeah. She said she needed a break. Her sister's really sick and she was stressed." "Did she say where in DC she was going?" She mentioned staying with a friend. Rachel something." "Rachel Winters?" "Yeah, that sounds right." Detective Brennan leaned forward. She was playing bad cop, though her approach was more ice-cold than aggressive. "That's interesting," she said, "because we spoke to Rachel Winters. She hasn't seen or heard from Vanessa." Marcus's expression didn't change. "Oh, maybe I got the name wrong. Or maybe Vanessa never went to DC, Brennan said flatly. "She definitely left. I saw her go." "What was she wearing?" Marcus hesitated just for a fraction of a second. Jeans? A blue shirt, I think." "Did she take a suitcase?" "Yeah. A black one. With wheels." "Did she drive or take a bus?" "She drove. In her Civic." Brennan made a note. "We found her Civic parked on her street. Same place it's been for weeks." Marcus shifted in his seat. "Maybe she took an Uber to the bus station?" "Maybe. Or maybe she never left." "I don't know what you want me to say." "She left. I didn't follow her." Torres jumped in, his voice friendly and non-threatening. "Marcus, here's the thing. We're not accusing you of anything. We're just trying to find Vanessa. Her family's worried. Her sister's dying. If you know anything at all, now's the time to tell us." "I've told you everything I know." Brennan pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a photo. "Do you recognize these?" It was a picture of the carpet stains in Vanessa's bedroom. "Looks like carpet," Marcus said. "It's carpet that's been cleaned repeatedly with bleach and peroxide. The kind of cleaning you do when you're trying to remove blood." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I don't know anything about that. You've been staying in that apartment." "Yeah, but I didn't stain the carpet." "Maybe Vanessa spilled something before she left. Something that required industrial-strength cleaning?" "I don't know. Ask her when you find her." The interrogation continued for 3 hours. Brennan and Torres tag-teamed Marcus, circling back to the same questions, looking for inconsistencies, applying pressure. But Marcus stuck to his story. Vanessa left for DC. He didn't know where she was. He was just as worried as everyone else. Finally, at 6 p.m. they had to let him go. They didn't have enough evidence to hold him. As Marcus stood to leave, Brennan said, "Don't leave town. We'll have more questions." Marcus nodded and walked out. But inside his mind was racing. They suspected him. They were closing in. He needed to run. The forensic team spent 2 days processing Vanessa's apartment. What they found was damning. The carpet stains tested positive for human blood, type A positive, matching Vanessa's blood type. The stains formed a pattern consistent with arterial spray and pooling, suggesting massive blood loss in a confined space. The bathroom grout also tested positive for blood, despite the extensive cleaning. Luminol testing revealed blood traces on the bedroom walls, the hallway, and inside the bathtub, glowing blue-green under UV light in a pattern that told a horrifying story of violence and attempted cover-up. They found a single fingerprint on the inside of the bathroom cabinet, a print that had been missed during Marcus's cleaning frenzy. It was Vanessa's, positioned in a way that suggested she'd grabbed the cabinet while struggling or falling. In the kitchen sink trap, forensic technicians found microscopic tissue fragments that DNA testing would later confirm belonged to Vanessa. But the most damning evidence came from Vanessa's car. Forensic analysis of the trunk revealed blood traces that matched Vanessa's DNA. They also found fibers from the garbage bags Marcus had used to transport her body, along with soil samples that contained decomposed organic matter, human decomposition specifically. A cadaver dog was brought in. The dog alerted on the trunk of the car, indicating it had recently been in contact with human remains. Detective Brennan reviewed all the evidence and came to one conclusion. Vanessa Ashford was dead, and Marcus Whitmore had killed her. But they still needed to find the body. On July 27, Detective Brennan reached out to Sergeant David Carver, one of the military police officers who had been present at the shop confrontation. "We need your help," she told him. "Marcus Whitmore is our primary suspect, but he's not talking. He's too smart, too prepared. But you're military police. You have different methods." Carver understood what she was implying. "You want us to bring him in? Unofficially. Scare him. Rattle him. Get him to make a mistake." It wasn't strictly legal, but Carver agreed. Vanessa had been a good person trying to help Marcus out of kindness. If he'd killed her for it? That night, Carver and Corporal Martinez showed up at Timeless Threads just as Marcus was closing up. "Marcus Whitmore," Carver said, his voice cold and authoritative. "We need you to come with us." "Am I under arrest?" Marcus asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Not yet. But we have some questions about Vanessa Ashford. And about the money you stole from her shop." Marcus's face paled. "I didn't steal anything. That's not what the evidence says. We've been going through the shop's financial records. We've talked to the pawn shops. We know what you did. You can't prove." "We can prove all of it," Martinez interrupted. "But that's not why we're here. We're here about the murder." "I didn't murder anyone." "Then where is she?" Carver stepped closer, using his full height and military bearing to intimidate. "Where's Vanessa's body?" "She's in D.C. "Bullshit. Her car's been parked on her street for 2 weeks. Her bank accounts haven't been touched. Her phone's pinging from locations you've been to. You've been pretending to be her, sending texts, posting on social media. We know everything, Marcus." Marcus's breathing became rapid and shallow. He was panicking and the officers could see it. "I want a lawyer," Marcus stammered. "You're not under arrest. You don't get a lawyer. But here's what's going to happen." Carver leaned in close, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "We're going to find her body. And when we do, you're going to fry in the electric chair. Virginia still has the death penalty, and they love using it on cop killers and child murderers. You know what you are? You're worse. You killed a woman who showed you nothing but kindness." Marcus was sweating now, his hands shaking. I didn't mean to," he whispered. Carver's eyes widened. "What did you say?" Marcus realized his mistake immediately. "Nothing. I didn't say anything." "You said you didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what, Marcus?" "I need to leave. I need to." "You're not going anywhere until you tell us where she is." But Marcus clammed up. He'd already said too much and he knew it. The officers couldn't hold him without arresting him, so they eventually let him go. But they'd gotten what they needed, a slip of the tongue that was as good as a confession. Detective Brennan obtained an arrest warrant for Marcus Whitmore on July 28, charging him with first-degree murder, theft, and evidence tampering. A SWAT team executed the warrant at 5 a.m., storming Vanessa's apartment where Marcus had continued staying despite everything. They found him in bed, still asleep, Vanessa's phone on the nightstand next to him. "Police. Hands where I can see them." Marcus woke up to 5 assault rifles pointed at his head. He was dragged out of bed, thrown to the floor, and cuffed so tightly the plastic zip ties cut into his wrists. "Marcus Whitmore, you're under arrest for the murder of Vanessa Marie Ashford." The Miranda rights echoed in his ears as they hauled him to his feet. Neighbors watched from their windows as Marcus was walked out of the building in his boxer shorts and t-shirt, his face pale and terrified. News vans arrived within minutes. By noon, Marcus's mugshot was all over local news and social media. Childhood friend arrested for boutique owner's murder. Killer lived in victim's home while sending fake texts. 18-year-old charged in brutal slaying of woman who helped him. The story went viral. People were horrified, enraged, heartbroken. But the Ashford family was still in hell. Because they still didn't have Vanessa's body. For the next week, search teams scoured Richmond and the surrounding areas, looking for Vanessa's remains. They used cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, and thermal imaging drones. They searched abandoned buildings, dumpsters, rivers, and landfills. Nothing. Marcus refused to talk. Even when his public defender advised him to cooperate, to show remorse, to help locate the body in exchange for a plea deal, he stayed silent. "They can't prove I killed her if they can't find her," Marcus told his lawyer. They have enough forensic evidence to convict you 10 times over, his lawyer replied. But if you help them find her body, if you show remorse, maybe we can avoid the death penalty. I'm not telling them anything. So the search continued. It was Liam who finally made the breakthrough. He remembered something from their childhood, a place Marcus had always loved. A hiking trail outside the city, near a ravine where they used to explore as kids, pretending they were adventurers discovering uncharted territory. Check the old mill trail, Liam told Detective Brennan, his voice hollow. There's a ravine about 2 miles in. If Marcus wanted to hide something where no one would find it. Brennan assembled a search team and headed to the trail that afternoon. The ravine was steep and treacherous, overgrown with thorny bushes and poison ivy. The search dogs went crazy, barking and pulling at their handlers, leading them down into the valley. 50 feet down, beneath a fallen oak tree covered in moss and vines, they found freshly disturbed earth. They began digging. 3 feet down they hit something solid. A duffel bag. Black fabric, now stained and rotting. Detective Brennan unzipped it with gloved hands, already knowing what she would find. Inside were the dismembered remains of Vanessa Ashford. Even the hardened forensic technicians turned away, sickened by what they saw. Vanessa had been butchered so thoroughly that visual identification was impossible. Her face was unrecognizable. Her body had been cut into pieces with such violence that investigators initially thought they were dealing with multiple victims. But the medical examiner found something. A small scar on what remained of the left shoulder. A childhood scar from when Vanessa had fallen off her bike at age 9, requiring 14 stitches. Catherine Ashford had told them about that scar during the initial missing person report, remembering how she'd held her daughter's hand while the doctor sewed her up, promising her ice cream afterward. DNA testing later confirmed it. The remains belonged to Vanessa Marie Ashford. She had been 26 years old. When Detective Brennan arrived at the Ashford home to deliver the news, she found Liam sitting on the front porch, staring at nothing. He already knew. He could see it in her face. "We found her," Brennan said softly. Liam didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just nodded. "Was it bad?" he asked. Brennan didn't know how to answer that. Any answer would be insufficient, inadequate. "Yes," she said finally. "It was bad." Liam stood up and walked into the house without another word. Inside, Catherine and Gerald were sitting in the living room with Emily, who had been brought home from the hospital for hospice care. She was skeletal now, barely conscious, her body ravaged by cancer and the emotional trauma of her sister's disappearance. "They found her," Liam said. Catherine let out a sound that wasn't quite human, a wail of pure anguish that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. Gerald sat frozen, his face gray, his hands trembling. Emily's eyes fluttered open. "Nessa?" she whispered. "Is Nessa coming home?" Liam knelt by her bedside, tears finally streaming down his face. "Yeah, she's coming home." But he couldn't bring himself to tell her the truth. Not yet. Not when she was already so close to death. That night, Liam sat alone in his childhood bedroom, surrounded by memories of growing up with Marcus. Photos of them at baseball games, birthday parties, camping trips. 2 best friends who'd sworn they'd be brothers forever. Liam tore every single photo in half. Then he went into the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. Catherine Ashford tried to be strong. She tried to hold it together for Emily, for Liam, for Gerald. But the weight of her daughter's murder was too much. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. She would sit for hours in Vanessa's old bedroom, holding her daughter's clothes, sobbing until she couldn't breathe. "I sent her to her death," Catherine whispered to Gerald one night. "I raised my son to be kind, to help people. And because of that kindness, my daughter is dead." "This isn't your fault," Gerald said, but his voice was hollow. He was breaking too. "I let that monster into our home," Catherine continued. "I fed him. I treated him like family. And he killed my baby girl." On August 3rd, 6 days after Vanessa's remains were found, Catherine suffered a massive stroke. She collapsed in the kitchen while making tea, the same kitchen where she'd served Marcus hundreds of meals over the years. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but it was too late. The stroke had been catastrophic, destroying most of her brain function. She died in the hospital at 2:17 a.m. on August 4th, with Gerald holding her hand. Her last words, whispered so softly Gerald barely heard them, "Tell Nessa I'm sorry." The doctors said it was the stress, the grief, the emotional trauma of losing a child in such a horrific way. But Liam knew the truth. Marcus Whitmore had killed his mother too. Just not with a knife. Emily Ashford was dying. The doctor said she had days, maybe a week at most. The cancer had spread to her brain, her lungs, her liver. She was on so much morphine that she drifted in and out of consciousness, rarely lucid. Liam and Gerald made a decision. They wouldn't tell her about Vanessa's murder. They wouldn't tell her about their mother's death. What would be the point? Emily was already in agony. Why add more pain to her final days? So they lied. When Emily asked about Vanessa, they said she was on her way home. When she asked about their mother, they said Catherine was at the store. "I want to see them," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "Before I go, I want to see Nessa and Mom." "Soon," Liam promised, holding her skeletal hand. "They'll be here soon." But Emily wasn't stupid. Even through the morphine haze, she sensed something was wrong. "Liam," she said one afternoon, her eyes suddenly clear and focused. "Tell me the truth. What happened to Nessa?" Liam felt his heart shatter. He wanted to lie to protect her. But she deserved the truth. "She's gone, Em," he whispered. "Marcus killed her." Emily's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her hollow cheeks. "And Mom?" She couldn't handle it. She had a stroke. "She's gone too." Emily closed her eyes, and for a moment, Liam thought she'd slipped back into unconsciousness. But then she spoke, her voice soft but firm. "Good." "What?" "I'm glad I'm dying," Emily said. "I don't want to live in a world without them." She died 2 days later, on August 9th, with Liam and Gerald by her side. Her last words, "Tell Nessa I'm coming." The trial of Marcus Elijah Whitmore began on October 12th, less than 3 months after Vanessa's murder. The speed was unusual, but the prosecution had pushed for it, and the defense hadn't objected. There was so much evidence that dragging it out seemed pointless. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled. News cameras lined the walls. Outside, protesters held signs, "Justice for Vanessa," and "Death to Marcus." Marcus sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit, looking younger than his 18 years. His public defender, a tired-looking woman named Jennifer Holloway, no relation to the judge, sat beside him, already knowing this was a losing battle. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Richard Thornton, a man with 30 years of experience and a conviction rate of 94%. He was known for his theatrical courtroom style and his ability to make juries feel the victim's humanity. Judge Margaret Holloway presided, the same judge who would later break down while sentencing Marcus. "The state may present its opening statement," Judge Holloway said. D.A. Thornton stood, buttoning his suit jacket, and approached the jury box. The 12 jurors, 7 women, 5 men, ranging in age from 24 to 68, watched him intently. "Ladies and gentlemen," Thornton began, his voice measured and solemn, "this case is about betrayal. It's about a young woman named Vanessa Ashford who made the fatal mistake of showing kindness to a monster." He clicked a remote, and a large screen behind him displayed a photo of Vanessa. Beautiful, smiling, full of life. Vanessa was 26 years old. She owned a successful business. She had a family who loved her. She had dreams and plans and a future. And she had a brother, Liam, who asked her to help his best friend, a young man who was struggling, who had nowhere to go, who needed a chance. Another click. A photo of Marcus appeared, his senior photo from high school, where he looked like any normal teenager. "That young man is Marcus Whitmore." The defendant. And Vanessa, being the kind and generous person she was, said yes. She gave Marcus a job. She gave him a place to live. She gave him a chance to turn his life around. Thornton's voice hardened. And how did Marcus repay her kindness? He stole from her $30,000 in cash and merchandise. And when she discovered the theft, when she tried to confront him, he murdered her. The courtroom was silent. But he didn't just murder her, Thornton continued. He butchered her. He stabbed her 23 times. He dismembered her body so savagely that her own mother couldn't recognize her remains. Then he hid her body in a ravine like she was garbage. Like she was nothing. Jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One woman wiped tears from her eyes. And then, and this is perhaps the most chilling part, Marcus Whitmore pretended Vanessa was still alive. He used her phone to send text messages. He posted on her social media. He continued stealing from her shop, all while her family desperately searched for her, praying she was okay. Thornton paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Vanessa Ashford showed Marcus Whitmore kindness. And it killed her. But it didn't just kill her. It destroyed her entire family. Her mother, Catherine, died from the grief. Her sister, Emily, who was already battling cancer, died heartbroken and shattered. 3 women, a mother and 2 daughters, all gone because of one man's greed and violence. He turned and pointed at Marcus. That man. Marcus stared straight ahead, expressionless. Over the coming days, you will see evidence that is overwhelming and irrefutable. You will see forensic proof of murder. You will hear from investigators who uncovered Marcus's lies. You will see the very knife he used to end Vanessa's life. And when you have seen all of that evidence, I will ask you to do one thing. Find Marcus Whitmore guilty of first-degree murder. Because that's exactly what he is. A murderer. Thank you. Thornton sat down. The defense's opening statement was brief and unconvincing. Ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer Holloway said, the prosecution wants you to believe my client is a monster. But Marcus Whitmore is an 18-year-old kid from a broken home who made terrible mistakes. We don't dispute that Vanessa Ashford is dead. We don't dispute that it's a tragedy. But you must consider all the evidence and determine whether the state has truly proven, beyond a reasonable doubt, that my client intended to commit murder. Thank you. She sat down. It was pathetic and everyone knew it. The trial was essentially over before it began. The prosecution spent 3 days methodically destroying any possibility of Marcus's innocence. Day 1, the forensics. Dr. Rachel Kim, the chief forensic pathologist, took the stand and walked the jury through her findings. The victim suffered 23 stab wounds, Dr. Kim testified, her voice clinical but tinged with sadness. 12 to the torso, 8 to the throat and neck area, and 3 defensive wounds to her hands and forearms, indicating she attempted to fight off her attacker. She displayed autopsy photos on the screen. Several jurors looked away. The wounds were inflicted with extreme force. Several ribs were fractured from the impact. The throat wounds severed both the carotid artery and jugular vein, which would have caused massive blood loss within minutes. But what's most significant? Dr. Kim paused, adjusting her glasses. The pattern of wounds suggests a frenzy. This wasn't a single moment of violence. This was sustained, repeated stabbing over several minutes. Can you estimate how long the attack lasted? D. Thornton asked. Based on the wound patterns, blood spatter analysis, and defensive injuries, I'd estimate the active attack lasted between 3 and 5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes of stabbing someone, Thornton repeated slowly, letting it sink in. That's not a moment of passion. That's sustained violence. Objection, the defense attorney said weakly. Speculation. Overruled, Judge Holloway said. The witness is qualified to give expert opinion. Dr. Kim continued, the body was then dismembered post-mortem using what appears to be kitchen knives and a hacksaw. The cuts were crude, not surgical. Whoever did this had no anatomical knowledge and used significant force. We found microscopic metal fragments in the bone cuts consistent with a hardware store hacksaw. She pulled up photos of the hacksaw found in Vanessa's apartment closet. Forensic testing had revealed bone fragments and blood in the teeth of the saw. This saw? Thornton asked. Yes. DNA from the bone fragments matched the victim. Fingerprints on the handle matched the defendant. The defense had no questions. Next came the forensic team who'd processed Vanessa's apartment. Crime scene investigator Thomas Delacroix showed the jury dozens of photos. The luminol revealed blood patterns, the carpet stains, the bathtub, the sink trap with tissue fragments. The perpetrator attempted an extensive cleanup, Delacroix explained. Multiple applications of bleach and hydrogen peroxide. But blood is nearly impossible to completely remove. It seeps into grout, into carpet padding, into drain traps. And luminol reveals it all. The photos were damning. Under UV light, Vanessa's bedroom looked like a slaughterhouse, blue-green streaks and splatters covering nearly every surface. In 30 years of crime scene investigation, Delacroix said quietly, I've never seen a scene with this much blood volume in a residential setting. Day 2. The digital evidence. The prosecution called Detective Lisa Park, a digital forensics specialist. I analyzed all communications from Vanessa Ashford's phone after July 15th, Detective Park testified. The date she was last seen alive. And what did you find? 14 text messages sent from her phone between July 15th and July 24th. None of them matched Vanessa's typical communication patterns. Can you explain? Vanessa typically used emojis frequently, hearts, smiling faces, coffee cups. She signed texts with her initial or full name. She used casual language and often included questions to continue conversation. The messages sent after July 15th contained none of these characteristics. They were brief, formal, and designed to prevent further communication. Detective Park displayed several text messages on the screen. July 16th to Helena Pritchard, taking time off. We'll be in touch. B. July 18th to Jonathan Crane. Need more time. Don't worry. July 21st to Liam Ashford, still in D.C. We'll call soon. Notice the brevity, Park said. Notice how they avoid specific details that could be fact-checked. This is classic impersonation behavior. Did you trace the location of the phone when these messages were sent? Yes. All messages were sent from locations in Richmond, Vanessa's apartment, her shop, and a pawn shop on Broad Street. None were sent from Washington, D.C., where the messages claimed she was. And what about social media? 2 Instagram posts were made from her account. Both used old photos from her camera roll, nothing new or current. The captions were generic. Again, behavior inconsistent with Vanessa's normal social media usage. Thornton displayed phone records showing that Marcus's personal phone had pinged from the same cell towers as Vanessa's phone during the time the fake messages were being sent. They were together, Thornton said. Or rather, the defendant had possession of Vanessa's phone and was using it to create a false narrative while his own phone was in his pocket. The defense attorney stood. Objection. Speculation. Sustained, Judge Holloway said. The jury will disregard that characterization. But the damage was done. The jury understood. Day 3, the financial crimes. Forensic accountant Margaret Chen walked the jury through the theft. She presented spreadsheets, bank records, and pawn shop receipts that painted a clear picture. Marcus Whitmore had systematically looted timeless threads for months. Between April and July, approximately $78,000 in cash and merchandise disappeared, Chen testified. We traced $43,000 of this to bank deposits in Marcus Whitmore's account, disguised as vendor payments and supplier refunds. And the merchandise? We tracked 17 high-value items to 4 different pawn shops in Richmond, Petersburg, and Norfolk. Each item was sold for cash by someone matching Marcus Whitmore's description. 2 pawn shops had security camera footage that clearly shows the defendant. The prosecution played the footage. There was Marcus, plain as day, handing over a vintage Hermes scarf and accepting a stack of bills. The total stolen was approximately $78,000, Chen concluded. This wasn't petty theft. This was systematic, calculated fraud. On day 4, the prosecution presented its most visceral evidence, the murder weapon itself. Detective Sarah Brennan took the stand, holding a clear evidence bag containing a large kitchen knife, its blade still stained brown with dried blood despite attempts to clean it. This knife was recovered from a storm drain 3 blocks from Vanessa Ashford's apartment, Brennan testified. DNA testing revealed blood matching the victim on the blade, handle, and in the crevice where the blade meets the handle. Were there fingerprints? Partial prints on the handle matched Marcus Whitmore. He tried to wipe it clean, but he missed areas. Thornton held up the evidence bag, showing it to the jury. This is the knife that ended Vanessa Ashford's life. The defendant stabbed her 23 times with this knife, then tried to dispose of it. But he didn't throw it far enough. And he didn't clean it well enough. He placed the knife on the evidence table, where it sat like an accusation for the rest of the trial. The defense attorney barely cross-examined. What could she say? On day 5, Liam Ashford took the stand. He had lost 20 pounds since his sister's death. His eyes were hollow, his face gaunt. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. D.A. Thornton approached him gently. Mr. Ashford, thank you for being here. I know this is incredibly difficult. Liam nodded, his hands shaking in his lap. Can you tell the jury about your relationship with Marcus Whitmore? Liam's voice was barely above a whisper. He was my best friend. Since we were 7 years old. And how did Marcus come to work for your sister? I asked her to help him. He was about to be evicted. He couldn't find work. I thought if he had a chance, if someone believed in him, he could turn his life around. Did you have any indication that Marcus was capable of violence? No, never. He was just Marcus, my friend. The guy who slept over at our house 100 times. Who ate at our table. Who my mom treated like another son. Liam's voice cracked. She died because of him, you know. My mom. The grief killed her. Objection, the defense attorney said. Irrelevant. Your Honor, Thornton said, this goes to the devastating impact of the defendant's actions. I'll allow it, Judge Holloway said quietly. Liam continued, after they found Vanessa's body, my mom, she just broke. She had a stroke and died 6 days later. And my sister Emily, who had cancer, she couldn't handle it either. She died heartbroken. Tears streamed down Liam's face. 3 people in my family are dead because I asked my sister to help my best friend. That's something I'll have to live with forever. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of people crying. Thornton let the moment breathe before asking his next question. When did you first suspect something was wrong? When I came back from North Carolina and Vanessa wasn't at the hospital with Emily. That wasn't like her. She would never abandon family, especially not Emily. Liam wiped his eyes. And when I talked to Marcus, something felt wrong. He was too calm, too rehearsed. Like he'd been practicing what to say. Did he explain where Vanessa was? He said she was in D.C., staying with her friend Rachel. But when I called Rachel, she hadn't seen Vanessa. That's when I knew Marcus was lying. That's when I knew something terrible had happened. One final question, Mr. Ashford. In the months since your sister's death, have you had any communication with Marcus Whitmore? He sent me a letter from jail. This was news to everyone. Thornton feigned surprise, though he'd obviously known about it. What did the letter say? Liam pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. He wrote, "I'm sorry things got out of control. I never meant to hurt anyone. I hope someday you can forgive me. You'll always be my brother." Liam's voice turned cold. There's no mention of Vanessa. No acknowledgement of what he did to her. Just self-pity and a pathetic attempt to maintain our friendship. What did you do with the letter? I burned it. The defense had no cross-examination. On day 6, the prosecution played the recording of Marcus's interrogation with Sergeant Carver and Corporal Martinez, the one where he'd accidentally said, "I didn't mean to." The courtroom listened in rapt silence as Carver's voice boomed through the speakers. "Where's Vanessa's body?" "She's in D.C. "Bullshit. We know everything, Marcus." Long pause. Then Marcus's voice, barely audible, I didn't mean to." "What did you say?" "Nothing. I didn't say anything." "You said you didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what, Marcus?" Silence. D.A. Thornton paused the recording. "Ladies and gentlemen, that's as close to a confession as we got at the time. But it was enough." He then played a second recording, one taken 2 weeks later, after Marcus's public defender had convinced him to give a statement in hopes of avoiding the death penalty. In this recording, Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless. "I didn't plan to kill her. She confronted me about the money. She said she was going to the police. I panicked. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and, I don't know, everything went red. Next thing I knew, she was on the floor and there was blood everywhere." "What did you do then?" Detective Brennan's voice asked on the tape. "I knew I had to hide it. Hide her. So I put her in the bathtub and I cut her up. I put the pieces in bags and buried them." "Where?" "Old Mill Trail. In the ravine." "Why did you continue using her phone? Why pretend she was alive?" "I needed time. Time to figure out what to do. If people thought she was just away, they wouldn't look for her. I could cover my tracks." "Did you feel remorse?" Long pause. "I felt like I had to survive." The recording ended. Several jurors looked physically ill. Thornton stood. The defendant's own words, "Ladies and gentlemen." No remorse. No humanity. Just cold calculation about how to get away with murder. The defense had almost nothing to work with. Jennifer Holloway called a psychologist, Dr. Raymond Pierce, who testified that Marcus came from a traumatic background, with an absent father and an alcoholic mother. Children who grow up in unstable environments often develop maladaptive coping mechanisms, Dr. Pierce explained. Marcus learned to prioritize survival above all else. His moral development was stunted. "Are you saying he didn't know right from wrong?" Holloway asked. "No, he knew. But his psychological framework was different from someone raised in a stable, loving home." On cross-examination, D.A. Thornton destroyed this argument in less than 5 minutes. "Dr. Pierce, you've interviewed Marcus Whitmore 3 times, correct?" "Yes." "Did he ever express remorse for killing Vanessa Ashford?" "He expressed regret about the situation." "That's not what I asked. Did he express remorse for the act of murder itself? For stabbing a woman 23 times? Pause. Not explicitly. Did he cry during your interviews? No. Did he ask about Vanessa's family? About how they were coping? No. Did he, at any point, say he wished he could undo what he did? He said he wished things had gone differently. Again, not what I asked. Dr. Pierce, in your expert opinion, does Marcus Whitmore feel genuine remorse for murdering Vanessa Ashford? Long pause. Dr. Pierce looked uncomfortable. It's difficult to assess. Yes or no, doctor? No. I don't believe he does. No further questions. The defense also tried to argue that Marcus should be charged with second-degree murder, not first-degree, claiming the killing wasn't premeditated. But DA Thornton easily countered this. The defendant used her phone to lure her into a false sense of security. He went to the kitchen, selected a weapon, and approached her bedroom. Those are deliberate acts that show planning and intent. This was first-degree murder. Judge Holloway agreed. On day 8, both sides gave their closing arguments. The defense went first. Jennifer Holloway stood before the jury, looking tired and defeated. She knew she'd lost, but she had to try. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened to Vanessa Ashford is a tragedy. There's no denying that. But we must separate tragedy from the legal standard of first-degree murder. My client is 18 years old. He's a product of a broken home, of poverty, of neglect. He made terrible decisions, stealing, lying, and yes, killing. But was it premeditated? Was it planned? She gestured toward Marcus, who sat expressionless at the defense table. Look at him. He's barely more than a child. A scared, damaged child who panicked when confronted. This is manslaughter, perhaps second-degree murder, but not the cold, calculated first-degree murder the state is alleging. She sat down. It was weak and everyone knew it. Then DA Thornton stood for his closing argument, and he was magnificent. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, pacing slowly before the jury, the defense wants you to believe that Marcus Whitmore is a victim, a product of his environment, a scared child who simply panicked. He stopped and turned to face them. But let me tell you what Marcus Whitmore really is. He's a predator. A cold-blooded killer who murdered a woman for one reason and one reason only. She discovered he was a thief. Thornton pulled up a photo of Vanessa smiling in her shop. This is Vanessa Ashford, 26 years old, successful businesswoman, beloved daughter, loving sister, a woman who showed kindness to someone in need. He clicked to the next slide, Marcus's mugshot. And this is the person she helped. The person who repaid her kindness with theft, lies, and ultimately murder. Thornton's voice rose. The defense says this wasn't premeditated. But let's examine what we know. When Vanessa confronted him, Marcus had a choice. He could have confessed. He could have apologized. He could have left. But instead, he went to the kitchen, a separate room, selected the largest, most lethal knife available, and returned to her bedroom. Those are deliberate acts. That's premeditation. He paused, letting it sink in. And after he murdered her, after he stabbed her 23 times, he didn't call 911. He didn't confess. He didn't turn himself in. No. He spent hours dismembering her body. He cleaned up the crime scene. He buried her remains. He stole her phone and pretended to be her. He continued stealing from her shop while using her own social media accounts to create the illusion she was alive. Thornton's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. That's not panic. That's not a scared child making a mistake. That's cold, calculated evil. He approached the jury box, making eye contact with each juror. Vanessa Ashford is dead. But she's not the only victim of Marcus Whitmore's actions. Catherine Ashford, Vanessa's mother, died from the grief. Emily Ashford, Vanessa's sister, died heartbroken. 3 women taken from this world because of one man's greed and violence. He pointed at Marcus. That man. That 18-year-old man who the defense wants you to see as a child. Let me tell you something. Children don't stab people 23 times. Children don't dismember bodies. Children don't orchestrate elaborate cover-ups. Marcus Whitmore knew exactly what he was doing, every step of the way. Thornton walked back to the prosecution table and picked up the evidence bag containing the knife. This is the weapon. This is what he used to end Vanessa's life. Her blood is still on this blade. Her DNA is in the handle. His fingerprints are on it. He set it down on the railing of the jury box. The evidence is overwhelming. The forensics are irrefutable. The defendant's own words condemn him. There is no doubt, none whatsoever, that Marcus Whitmore murdered Vanessa Ashford in the first degree. His voice rose to a crescendo. And when you deliberate, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember that Vanessa Ashford showed Marcus Whitmore nothing but kindness. She gave him a job. She gave him a home. She gave him a chance. And he murdered her for it. Thornton's eyes were wet with tears now. The defense says Marcus deserves sympathy because of his background. But Vanessa Ashford deserves justice. Her mother deserves justice. Her sister deserves justice. Her father and brother, who have lost everyone they love, deserve justice. He turned and walked back to his seat, delivering his final line over his shoulder. Find him guilty. Give them justice. Because God knows they've earned it. The courtroom was silent. Judge Holloway called for a recess before jury instructions. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 32 minutes. In the courtroom, Liam Ashford sat with his father Gerald, both men hollow-eyed and silent. They held hands, something they hadn't done since Liam was a small child. "RD, a pin drop. Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Holloway asked. She paused, looking directly into Marcus's eyes. "And I have found none." The courtroom held its breath. "Marcus Elijah Whitmore, it is the judgment of this court that you are guilty of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. The jury has recommended death and I concur. You have proven yourself to be incapable of redemption, undeserving of mercy, and a danger to any society that would allow you to exist." Judge Holloway's voice rang out, powerful and final. "I hereby sentence you to death by electrocution, to be carried out at Greensville Correctional Center in accordance with Virginia law." The courtroom erupted. Cheers. Crying. Shouts of justice. But Judge Holloway wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper that somehow carried through the noise. "May God have mercy on your soul, Mr. Whitmore, because you deserve none from this earth. You deserve death. And I hope you spend every remaining moment of your life understanding the pain and terror Vanessa Ashford felt in her final minutes." She banged her gavel. "This court is adjourned." And then Judge Margaret Holloway broke down completely, covering her face with her hands as sobs racked her body. Court officers rushed to assist her as she stumbled from the bench. It was unprecedented, shocking, powerful, and it made national headlines within hours. The case of Marcus Whitmore became a media sensation. News outlets across the country covered the story. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. Social media exploded with debates about the death penalty, about the nature of evil, about whether someone so young could truly be beyond redemption. But for Liam and Gerald Ashford, none of it mattered. They went home to an empty house. A house that had once been filled with laughter and love. A house where Vanessa had played as a child, where Emily had painted in the sunroom, where Catherine had cooked Sunday dinners. Now it was a mausoleum. Liam couldn't sleep in his childhood bedroom anymore. Too many memories of Marcus spending the night, the two of them staying up late playing video games and talking about their futures. Gerald couldn't look at photos of his family without breaking down. They existed rather than lived, going through the motions of daily life while carrying an unbearable weight of grief and guilt. "I killed them," Liam said one night, staring into his untouched dinner. "If I hadn't asked Vanessa to help Marcus." "Stop," Gerald said firmly. "You showed compassion. You tried to help someone. That's not a crime. Marcus is the one who killed them. Not you. But I brought him into our lives. Because you're a good person. Because your mother raised you to help others. You can't blame yourself for someone else's evil." But Liam did blame himself. Every single day. He quit his job. He couldn't focus. Couldn't care. He spent his days in a fog of antidepressants and sleeping pills, barely functioning. Timeless Threads remained closed, eventually sold to a real estate developer who turned it into a coffee shop. The new owners had no idea about its dark history. Gerald tried to work, tried to maintain some sense of normalcy, but he was a shell of the man he'd been. Coworkers noticed. Friends noticed. But no one knew what to say. How do you comfort someone who's lost everything? Meanwhile, Marcus Whitmore sat in Sussex State Prison on death row, awaiting his execution. His mother Paula visited him once. She sat across from him in the visiting room, separated by thick glass, and stared at her son. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why did you do it?" Marcus looked at her with empty eyes. "I don't know, Mom. That's not good enough. It's the truth. I don't know. It just happened." Paula stood up. "I loved you. I tried my best, even when I was drowning in my own demons. But you..." She shook her head. "You're not my son anymore. I don't know what you are." She walked out and never returned. Marcus spent his days in a 6x8 cell, 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. 1 hour a day in a concrete recreation yard. No human contact except guards. He wrote letters to Liam that were never answered. He wrote to his old friends, but no one responded. He was completely alone, exactly as he deserved. The appeals process began immediately, standard for death penalty cases. Marcus's attorneys argued everything. Ineffective counsel, jury bias, cruel and unusual punishment because of his age. Everything was denied. Virginia Supreme Court upheld the sentence. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the case. Marcus Elijah Whitmore's execution was scheduled for March 15, 2026, 16 months after Vanessa's murder. As the execution date approached, media attention intensified. Death penalty opponents protested outside the prison holding signs, "Execution is murder," and "No death penalty for juveniles." But supporters far outnumbered them. Hundreds of people held counter-protests with signs reading "Justice for Vanessa" and "Fry the Monster." Inside the prison, Marcus met with a prison chaplain, Father Michael O'Brien, who tried to get him to confront what he'd done. "Marcus, you're going to die in 3 days," Father O'Brien said gently. "Before you go, you need to make peace with God. You need to acknowledge your sins." "I've already confessed," Marcus said flatly. "In court. On tape. What more do you want?" "I want genuine remorse. I want you to understand that you took a human life. Not just any life, but the life of someone who showed you kindness." "I know what I did." "Do you? Because every time we talk, you speak about Vanessa Ashford like she's an abstract concept. Like she wasn't a real person with dreams and feelings and people who loved her." Marcus was silent. "Her mother died because of you," Father O'Brien pressed. "Her sister died because of you. You didn't just kill one person, you destroyed an entire family. Do you understand that?" "Yes." "Then say it. Say, 'I murdered Vanessa Ashford and I'm sorry.'" Marcus looked at the priest with dead eyes. "What difference would it make? She's still dead. They're all still dead. Saying sorry won't bring them back. It would matter to her family. It would matter to God. And it should matter to you. It doesn't." Father O'Brien stared at him in horror. "You really are a monster." Marcus shrugged. "If you say so." The priest left, shaken to his core. In 40 years of ministry, including 15 years working with death row inmates, he'd never encountered someone so utterly devoid of empathy. 3 days before the execution, Liam Ashford. 3 stab wounds, Dr. Kim testified, her voice clinical but tinged with sadness. 12 to the torso, 8 to the throat and neck area, and 3 defensive wounds to her hands and forearms, indicating she attempted to fight off her attacker. She displayed autopsy photos on the screen. Several jurors looked away. The wounds were inflicted with extreme force. Several ribs were fractured from the impact. The throat wounds severed both the carotid artery and jugular vein, which would have caused massive blood loss within minutes. But what's most significant? Dr. Kim paused, adjusting her glasses. The pattern of wounds suggests a frenzy. This wasn't a single moment of violence. This was sustained, repeated stabbing over several minutes. "Can you estimate how long the attack lasted?" D. Thornton asked. "Based on the wound patterns, blood spatter analysis, and defensive injuries, I'd estimate the active attack lasted between 3 and 5 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes of stabbing someone," Thornton repeated slowly, letting it sink in. "That's not a moment of passion. That's sustained violence." "Objection," the defense attorney said weakly. "Speculation." "Overruled," Judge Holloway said. "The witness is qualified to give expert opinion." Dr. Kim continued. "The body was then dismembered post-mortem using what appears to be kitchen knives and a hacksaw. The cuts were crude, not surgical. Whoever did this had no anatomical knowledge and used significant force. We found microscopic metal fragments in the bone cuts consistent with a hardware store hacksaw." She pulled up photos of the hacksaw found in Vanessa's apartment closet. Forensic testing had revealed bone fragments and blood in the teeth of the saw. "This saw?" Thornton asked. "Yes." DNA from the bone fragments matched the victim. Fingerprints on the handle matched the defendant. The defense had no questions. Next came the forensic team who'd processed Vanessa's apartment. Crime scene investigator Thomas Delacroix showed the jury dozens of photos. The luminol revealed blood patterns, the carpet stains, the bathtub, the sink trap with tissue fragments. "The perpetrator attempted an extensive cleanup," Delacroix explained. "Multiple applications of bleach and hydrogen peroxide. But blood is nearly impossible to completely remove. It seeps into grout, into carpet padding, into drain traps. And luminol reveals it all." The photos were damning. Under UV light, Vanessa's bedroom looked like a slaughterhouse, blue-green streaks and splatters covering nearly every surface. "In 30 years of crime scene investigation," Delacroix said quietly, "I've never seen a scene with this much blood volume in a residential setting." Day 2, the digital evidence. The prosecution called Detective Lisa Park, a digital forensics specialist. "I analyzed all communications from Vanessa Ashford's phone after July 15th, Detective Park testified. "The date she was last seen alive." "And what did you find?" 14 text messages sent from her phone between July 15th and July 24th. None of them matched Vanessa's typical communication patterns. "Can you explain?" "Vanessa typically used emojis frequently, hearts, smiling faces, coffee cups. She signed texts with her initial or full name. She used casual language and often included questions to continue conversation. The messages sent after July 15th contained none of these characteristics. They were brief, formal, and designed to prevent further communication. Detective Park displayed several text messages on the screen. July 16th to Helena Pritchard, taking time off. Will be in touch. B. July 18th to Jonathan Crane, need more time. Don't worry. July 21st to Liam Ashford, still in D.C. Will call soon. Notice the brevity, Park said. Notice how they avoid specific details that could be fact-checked. This is classic impersonation behavior. Did you trace the location of the phone when these messages were sent? Yes. All messages were sent from locations in Richmond, Vanessa's apartment, her shop, and a pawn shop on Broad Street. None were sent from Washington, D.C., where the messages claimed she was. And what about social media? 2 Instagram posts were made from her account. Both used old photos from her camera roll, nothing new or current. The captions were generic. Again, behavior inconsistent with Vanessa's normal social media usage. Thornton displayed phone records showing that Marcus's personal phone had pinged from the same cell towers as Vanessa's phone during the time the fake messages were being sent. They were together, Thornton said. Or rather, the defendant had possession of Vanessa's phone and was using it to create a false narrative while his own phone was in his pocket. The defense attorney stood. Objection. Speculation. Sustained, Judge Holloway said. The jury will disregard that characterization. But the damage was done. The jury understood. Day 3, the financial crimes. Forensic accountant Margaret Chen walked the jury through the theft. She presented spreadsheets, bank records, and pawn shop receipts that painted a clear picture. Marcus Whitmore had systematically looted timeless threads for months. Between April and July, approximately $78,000 in cash and merchandise disappeared, Chen testified. We traced $43,000 of this to bank deposits in Marcus Whitmore's account, disguised as vendor payments and supplier refunds. And the merchandise? We tracked 17 high-value items to 4 different pawn shops in Richmond, Petersburg, and Norfolk. Each item was sold for cash by someone matching Marcus Whitmore's description. 2 pawn shops had security camera footage that clearly shows the defendant. The prosecution played the footage. There was Marcus, plain as day, handing over a vintage Hermes scarf and accepting a stack of bills. The total stolen was approximately $78,000, Chen concluded. This wasn't petty theft. This was systematic, calculated fraud. On day 4, the prosecution presented its most visceral evidence, the murder weapon itself. Detective Sarah Brennan took the stand, holding a clear evidence bag containing a large kitchen knife, its blade still stained brown with dried blood despite attempts to clean it. This knife was recovered from a storm drain 3 blocks from Vanessa Ashford's apartment, Brennan testified. DNA testing revealed blood matching the victim on the blade, handle, and in the crevice where the blade meets the handle. Were there fingerprints? Partial prints on the handle matched Marcus Whitmore. He tried to wipe it clean, but he missed areas. Thornton held up the evidence bag, showing it to the jury. This is the knife that ended Vanessa Ashford's life. The defendant stabbed her 23 times with this knife, then tried to dispose of it. But he didn't throw it far enough. And he didn't clean it well enough. He placed the knife on the evidence table, where it sat like an accusation for the rest of the trial. The defense attorney barely cross-examined. What could she say? On day 5, Liam Ashford took the stand. He had lost 20 pounds since his sister's death. His eyes were hollow, his face gaunt. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. D.A. Thornton approached him gently. Mr. Ashford, thank you for being here. I know this is incredibly difficult. Liam nodded, his hands shaking in his lap. Can you tell the jury about your relationship with Marcus Whitmore? Liam's voice was barely above a whisper. He was my best friend. Since we were 7 years old. And how did Marcus come to work for your sister? I asked her to help him. He was about to be evicted. He couldn't find work. I thought if he had a chance, if someone believed in him, he could turn his life around. Did you have any indication that Marcus was capable of violence? No, never. He was just Marcus, my friend. The guy who slept over at our house 100 times. Who ate at our table. Who my mom treated like another son. Liam's voice cracked. She died because of him, you know. My mom. The grief killed her. Objection, the defense attorney said. Irrelevant. Your Honor, Thornton said, This goes to the devastating impact of the defendant's actions. I'll allow it, Judge Holloway said quietly. Liam continued, after they found Vanessa's body, my mom, she just broke. She had a stroke and died 6 days later. And my sister Emily, who had cancer, she couldn't handle it either. She died heartbroken. Tears streamed down Liam's face. 3 people in my family are dead because I asked my sister to help my best friend. That's something I'll have to live with forever. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of people crying. Thornton let the moment breathe before asking his next question. When did you first suspect something was wrong? When I came back from North Carolina and Vanessa wasn't at the hospital with Emily. That wasn't like her. She would never abandon family, especially not Emily. Liam wiped his eyes. And when I talked to Marcus, something felt wrong. He was too calm, too rehearsed. Like he'd been practicing what to say. Did he explain where Vanessa was? He said she was in D.C., staying with her friend Rachel. But when I called Rachel, she hadn't seen Vanessa. That's when I knew Marcus was lying. That's when I knew something terrible had happened. One final question, Mr. Ashford. In the months since your sister's death, have you had any communication with Marcus Whitmore? He sent me a letter from jail. This was news to everyone. Thornton feigned surprise, though he'd obviously known about it. What did the letter say? Liam pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. He wrote, I'm sorry things got out of control. I never meant to hurt anyone. I hope someday you can forgive me. You'll always be my brother. Liam's voice turned cold. There's no mention of Vanessa. No acknowledgement of what he did to her. Just self-pity and a pathetic attempt to maintain our friendship. What did you do with the letter? I burned it. The defense had no cross-examination. On day 6, the prosecution played the recording of Marcus's interrogation with Sergeant Carver and Corporal Martinez, the one where he'd accidentally said, I didn't mean to. The courtroom listened in rapt silence as Carver's voice boomed through the speakers. Where's Vanessa's body? She's in D.C. Bullshit. We know everything, Marcus. Long pause. Then Marcus's voice, barely audible, I didn't mean to. What did you say? Nothing. I didn't say anything. You said you didn't mean to. Didn't mean to what, Marcus? Silence. D.A. Thornton paused the recording. Ladies and gentlemen, that's as close to a confession as we got at the time. But it was enough. He then played a second recording, one taken 2 weeks later, after Marcus's public defender had convinced him to give a statement in hopes of avoiding the death penalty. In this recording, Marcus's voice was flat, emotionless. I didn't plan to kill her. She confronted me about the money. She said she was going to the police. I panicked. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and, I don't know, everything went red. Next thing I knew, she was on the floor and there was blood everywhere. What did you do then? Detective Brennan's voice asked on the tape. I knew I had to hide it. Hide her. So I put her in the bathtub and I cut her up. I put the pieces in bags and buried them. Where? Old Mill Trail. In the ravine. Why did you continue using her phone? Why pretend she was alive? I needed time. Time to figure out what to do. If people thought she was just away, they wouldn't look for her. I could cover my tracks. Did you feel remorse? Long pause. I felt like I had to survive. The recording ended. Several jurors looked physically ill. Thornton stood. The defendant's own words, ladies and gentlemen. No remorse. No humanity. Just cold calculation about how to get away with murder. The defense had almost nothing to work with. Jennifer Holloway called a psychologist, Dr. Raymond Pierce, who testified that Marcus came from a traumatic background, with an absent father and an alcoholic mother. Children who grow up in unstable environments often develop maladaptive coping mechanisms, Dr. Pierce explained. Marcus learned to prioritize survival above all else. His moral development was stunted. Are you saying he didn't know right from wrong? Holloway asked. No, he knew. But his psychological framework was different from someone raised in a stable, loving home. On cross-examination, D.A. Thornton destroyed this argument in less than 5 minutes. Dr. Pierce, you've interviewed Marcus Whitmore 3 times, correct? Yes. Did he ever express remorse for killing Vanessa Ashford? He expressed regret about the situation. That's not what I asked. Did he express remorse for the act of murder itself? For stabbing a woman 23 times? Pause. Not explicitly. Did he cry during your interviews? No. Did he ask about Vanessa's family? About how they were coping? No. Did he, at any point, say he wished he could undo what he did? He said he wished things had gone differently. Again, not what I asked. Dr. Pierce, in your expert opinion, does Marcus Whitmore feel genuine remorse for murdering Vanessa Ashford? Long pause. Dr. Pierce looked uncomfortable. It's difficult to assess. Yes or no, doctor? No. I don't believe he does. No further questions. The defense also tried to argue that Marcus should be charged with second-degree murder, not first-degree, claiming the killing wasn't premeditated. But D.A. Thornton easily countered this. The defendant used her phone to lure her into a false sense of security. He went to the kitchen, selected a weapon, and approached her bedroom. Those are deliberate acts that show planning and intent. This was first-degree murder. Judge Holloway agreed. On day 8, both sides gave their closing arguments. The defense went first. Jennifer Holloway stood before the jury, looking tired and defeated. She knew she'd lost, but she had to try. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened to Vanessa Ashford is a tragedy. There's no denying that. But we must separate tragedy from the legal standard of first-degree murder. My client is 18 years old. He's a product of a broken home, of poverty, of neglect. He made terrible decisions, stealing, lying, and yes, killing. But was it premeditated? Was it planned? She gestured toward Marcus, who sat expressionless at the defense table. Look at him. He's barely more than a child. A scared, damaged child who panicked when confronted. This is manslaughter, perhaps second-degree murder, but not the cold, calculated first-degree murder the state is alleging. She sat down. It was weak and everyone knew it. Then D.A. Thornton stood for his closing argument, and he was magnificent. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, pacing slowly before the jury, the defense wants you to believe that Marcus Whitmore is a victim, a product of his environment, a scared child who simply panicked. He stopped and turned to face them. But let me tell you what Marcus Whitmore really is. He's a predator. A cold-blooded killer who murdered a woman for one reason and one reason only. She discovered he was a thief. Thornton pulled up a photo of Vanessa smiling in her shop. This is Vanessa Ashford, 26 years old, successful businesswoman, beloved daughter, loving sister, a woman who showed kindness to someone in need. He clicked to the next slide, Marcus's mugshot. And this is the person she helped. The person who repaid her kindness with theft, lies, and ultimately murder. Thornton's voice rose. The defense says this wasn't premeditated. But let's examine what we know. When Vanessa confronted him, Marcus had a choice. He could have confessed. He could have apologized. He could have left. But instead, he went to the kitchen, a separate room, selected the largest, most lethal knife available, and returned to her bedroom. Those are deliberate acts. That's premeditation. He paused, letting it sink in. And after he murdered her, after he stabbed her 23 times, he didn't call 911. He didn't confess. He didn't turn himself in. No. He spent hours dismembering her body. He cleaned up the crime scene. He buried her remains. He stole her phone and pretended to be her. He continued stealing from her shop while using her own social media accounts to create the illusion she was alive. Thornton's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. That's not panic. That's not a scared child making a mistake. That's cold, calculated evil. He approached the jury box, making eye contact with each juror. Vanessa Ashford is dead. But she's not the only victim of Marcus Whitmore's actions. Catherine Ashford, Vanessa's mother, died from the grief. Emily Ashford, Vanessa's sister, died heartbroken. 3 women taken from this world because of one man's greed and violence. He pointed at Marcus. That man. That 18-year-old man who the defense wants you to see as a child. Let me tell you something. Children don't stab people 23 times. Children don't dismember bodies. Children don't orchestrate elaborate cover-ups. Marcus Whitmore knew exactly what he was doing, every step of the way. Thornton walked back to the prosecution table and picked up the evidence bag containing the knife. This is the weapon. This is what he used to end Vanessa's life. Her blood is still on this blade. Her DNA is in the handle. His fingerprints are on it. He set it down on the railing of the jury box. The evidence is overwhelming. The forensics are irrefutable. The defendant's own words condemn him. There is no doubt, none whatsoever, that Marcus Whitmore murdered Vanessa Ashford in the first degree. His voice rose to a crescendo. And when you deliberate, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember that Vanessa Ashford showed Marcus Whitmore nothing but kindness. She gave him a job. She gave him a home. She gave him a chance. And he murdered her for it. Thornton's eyes were wet with tears now. The defense says Marcus deserves sympathy because of his background. But Vanessa Ashford deserves justice. Her mother deserves justice. Her sister deserves justice. Her father and brother, who have lost everyone they love, deserve justice. He turned and walked back to his seat, delivering his final line over his shoulder. Find him guilty. Give them justice. Because God knows they've earned it. The courtroom was silent. Judge Holloway called for a recess before jury instructions. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 32 minutes. In the courtroom, Liam Ashford sat with his father Gerald, both men hollow-eyed and silent. They held hands, something they hadn't done since Liam was a small child. Across the aisle, Marcus's mother Paula Whitmore sat alone, looking decades older than her 43 years. She'd been sober for 3 months, the longest stretch in 20 years, because she wanted to be present for her son's trial. She kept whispering prayers under her breath. When the jury filed back in, you could have heard a pin drop. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Holloway asked. The foreperson, a middle-aged black woman named Angela Thompson who worked as a nurse, stood. We have, Your Honor. What say you? On the charge of first-degree murder, we find the defendant, Marcus Elijah Whitmore, guilty. The courtroom erupted. Screams. Sobs. Shouts of yes, and thank God. Paula Whitmore let out an anguished wail. Marcus sat perfectly still, his face blank. Liam collapsed into his father's arms, his body racked with sobs. Not relief, but the release of months of tension and grief. Judge Holloway banged her gavel. Order. Order in this court. It took 5 minutes for the room to settle. On the charge of theft in the first degree? Judge Holloway asked. Guilty. On the charge of evidence tampering? Guilty. On the charge of abuse of a corpse? Guilty. Marcus was convicted on all counts. Judge Holloway set sentencing for 2 weeks later. November 2, 2024. The day that would make national headlines. The sentencing hearing was even more packed than the trial itself. Overflow crowds gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs and chanting. Inside, Judge Margaret Holloway sat at her bench, reviewing documents. She'd been a judge for 32 years. She'd sentenced murderers, rapists, child abusers, and terrorists. She prided herself on her objectivity, her ability to separate emotion from law. But this case had broken something in her. She'd watched the trial unfold. She'd seen the evidence. She'd heard Liam Ashford's testimony. She'd seen the autopsy photos of what Marcus Whitmore had done to Vanessa. And she'd barely slept since the verdict. The hearing began with victim impact statements. Liam Ashford went first. He walked to the podium slowly as if his legs could barely carry him. His prepared statement shook in his hands. Your Honor, he began, his voice trembling, I don't know how to put into words what Marcus Whitmore has taken from my family. He didn't just kill my sister. He destroyed 3 lives. Vanessa, my mother, and Emily, all gone. Liam looked directly at Marcus, who refused to meet his eyes. You were my best friend. I trusted you. My family trusted you. We fed you. We sheltered you. We loved you. And you repaid that love by murdering the kindest person I've ever known. His voice broke. I will never forgive you. Never. You don't deserve to breathe the same air as decent people. You don't deserve to live. He walked back to his seat, supported by his father. Gerald Ashford spoke next. I've lost 3/4 of my family. My wife. My 2 daughters. All because we tried to help someone in need. I'm 62 years old, and I have nothing left except 1 son and a lifetime of grief. If there's any justice in this world, Marcus Whitmore will pay with his life. Helena Pritchard, the shop owner who'd been at the confrontation, testified, Vanessa was a light in our community. She supported local businesses. She employed people fairly. She treated everyone with respect. And Marcus Whitmore snuffed out that light like it was nothing. D.A. Thornton then addressed the court. Your Honor, the state recommends the maximum penalty available under Virginia law, death by electrocution. The defendant's crimes were heinous, calculated, and without any mitigating factors. He has shown no remorse. He has offered no explanation that would justify mercy. The families of the victims, and society as a whole, demand his execution. The defense attorney made a half-hearted plea for life in prison without parole, citing Marcus's age and background. It fell flat. Judge Holloway called for a recess. When she returned 30 minutes later, her eyes were red. Would the defendant please rise? She said quietly. Marcus stood. For the first time there was fear in his eyes. He knew what was coming. Judge Holloway looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke. Mr. Whitmore, Judge Holloway began, her voice wavering, in 32 years on this bench, I have presided over thousands of cases. I have sentenced hundreds of defendants. I have seen the worst of humanity walk through these doors. She paused, struggling to maintain composure. But I have never encountered evil like yours. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa Ashford was 26 years old, the judge continued, her voice rising. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was successful, beloved, kind. And she made one mistake, she helped you. Judge Holloway's hands gripped the bench, knuckles white. You stole from her. You lied to her. And when she discovered your theft, you murdered her. But you didn't just kill her quickly. No. You stabbed her 23 times. You made her suffer. You made her feel terror and pain in her final moments. Tears began streaming down Judge Holloway's face, something no one in the courtroom had ever seen before. And then, and this is what haunts me, you butchered her body. You dismembered her so brutally that her own mother couldn't identify her remains. You treated her like she was garbage. Like she was nothing. The judge's voice cracked. But she wasn't nothing. She was someone's daughter. Someone's sister. Someone's friend. She was a human being who deserved to live, to love, to grow old. And you took that from her. She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. You didn't just kill Vanessa. You destroyed an entire family. Catherine Ashford died from the grief of losing her daughter. Emily Ashford died heartbroken. Gerald and Liam Ashford have lost everything. Judge Holloway stood, something she rarely did during sentencing. And through all of this you have shown no remorse, no humanity, no acknowledgement of the magnitude of what you've done. You wrote to Liam Ashford asking for forgiveness, but you never mentioned Vanessa. You only cared about yourself. Her voice turned to steel. I have searched my conscience. I have prayed for guidance. I have asked myself if there's any reason at all, why you should be allowed to live. She paused, looking directly into Marcus's eyes. And I have found none. The courtroom held its breath. Marcus Elijah Whitmore, it is the judgment of this court that you are guilty of first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. The jury has recommended death and I concur. You have proven yourself to be incapable of redemption, undeserving of mercy, and a danger to any society that would allow you to exist. Judge Holloway's voice rang out, powerful and final. I hereby sentence you to death by electrocution, to be carried out at Greensville Correctional Center in accordance with Virginia law. The courtroom erupted. Cheers. Crying. Shouts of justice. But Judge Holloway wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper that somehow carried through the noise. May God have mercy on your soul, Mr. Whitmore, because you deserve none from this earth. You deserve death. And I hope you spend every remaining moment of your life understanding the pain and terror Vanessa Ashford felt in her final minutes. She banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. And then Judge Margaret Holloway broke down completely, covering her face with her hands as sobs racked her body. Court officers rushed to assist her as she stumbled from the bench. It was unprecedented, shocking, powerful, and it made national headlines within hours. The case of Marcus Whitmore became a media sensation. News outlets across the country covered the story. True crime podcasts dissected every detail. Social media exploded with debates about the death penalty, about the nature of evil, about whether someone so young could truly be beyond redemption. But for Liam and Gerald Ashford, none of it mattered. They went home to an empty house. A house that had once been filled with laughter and love. A house where Vanessa had played as a child, where Emily had painted in the sunroom, where Catherine had cooked Sunday dinners. Now it was a mausoleum. Liam couldn't sleep in his childhood bedroom anymore. Too many memories of Marcus spending the night, the two of them staying up late playing video games and talking about their futures. Gerald couldn't look at photos of his family without breaking down. They existed rather than lived, going through the motions of daily life while carrying an unbearable weight of grief and guilt. I killed them, Liam said one night, staring into his untouched dinner. If I hadn't asked Vanessa to help Marcus. Stop, Gerald said firmly. You showed compassion. You tried to help someone. That's not a crime. Marcus is the one who killed them. Not you. But I brought him into our lives. Because you're a good person. Because your mother raised you to help others. You can't blame yourself for someone else's evil. But Liam did blame himself. Every single day. He quit his job. He couldn't focus. Couldn't care. He spent his days in a fog of antidepressants and sleeping pills, barely functioning. Timeless Threads remained closed, eventually sold to a real estate developer who turned it into a coffee shop. The new owners had no idea about its dark history. Gerald tried to work, tried to maintain some sense of normalcy, but he was a shell of the man he'd been. Coworkers noticed. Friends noticed. But no one knew what to say. How do you comfort someone who's lost everything? Meanwhile, Marcus Whitmore sat in Sussex State Prison on death row, awaiting his execution. His mother Paula visited him once. She sat across from him in the visiting room, separated by thick glass, and stared at her son. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why did you do it?" Marcus looked at her with empty eyes. "I don't know, Mom. That's not good enough. It's the truth. I don't know. It just happened." Paula stood up. "I loved you. I tried my best, even when I was drowning in my own demons. But you..." She shook her head. "You're not my son anymore. I don't know what you are." She walked out and never returned. Marcus spent his days in a 6x8 cell, 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. 1 hour a day in a concrete recreation yard. No human contact except guards. He wrote letters to Liam that were never answered. He wrote to his old friends, but no one responded. He was completely alone, exactly as he deserved. The appeals process began immediately, standard for death penalty cases. Marcus's attorneys argued everything. Ineffective counsel, jury bias, cruel and unusual punishment because of his age. Everything was denied. Virginia Supreme Court upheld the sentence. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the case. Marcus Elijah Whitmore's execution was scheduled for March 15, 2026, 16 months after Vanessa's murder. As the execution date approached, media attention intensified. Death penalty opponents protested outside the prison, holding signs, "Execution is murder," and "No death penalty for juveniles." But supporters far outnumbered them. Hundreds of people held counter-protests with signs reading "Justice for Vanessa" and "Fry the Monster." Inside the prison, Marcus met with a prison chaplain, Father Michael O'Brien, who tried to get him to confront what he'd done. "Marcus, you're going to die in 3 days," Father O'Brien said gently. "Before you go, you need to make peace with God. You need to acknowledge your sins." "I've already confessed," Marcus said flatly. "In court. On tape. What more do you want?" "I want genuine remorse. I want you to understand that you took a human life. Not just any life, but the life of someone who showed you kindness." "I know what I did." "Do you?" "Because every time we talk, you speak about Vanessa Ashford like she's an abstract concept. Like she wasn't a real person with dreams and feelings and people who loved her." Marcus was silent. "Her mother died because of you," Father O'Brien pressed. "Her sister died because of you. You didn't just kill one person, you destroyed an entire family. Do you understand that?" "Yes." "Then say it. Say, 'I murdered Vanessa Ashford and I'm sorry.'" Marcus looked at the priest with dead eyes. "What difference would it make? She's still dead. They're all still dead. Saying sorry won't bring them back. It would matter to her family. It would matter to God. And it should matter to you. It doesn't." Father O'Brien stared at him in horror. "You really are a monster." Marcus shrugged. "If you say so." The priest left, shaken to his core. In 40 years of ministry, including 15 years working with death row inmates, he'd never encountered someone so utterly devoid of empathy. 3 days before the execution, Liam Ashford received a letter from the Department of Corrections. As the victim's next of kin, he was invited to witness Marcus Whitmore's execution. Liam sat at his kitchen table, staring at the letter for 3 hours. Gerald found him there, the paper crumpled in his fist. "What's that?" "They want me to watch," Liam said hollowly. "They want me to be there when Marcus dies." Gerald sat down across from him. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." Liam's voice was raw. "Part of me wants to see him suffer. Wants to watch him die knowing that he destroyed everything I loved. But another part of me..." He trailed off. "Another part of you remembers the friend he used to be," Gerald finished quietly. "Yeah." Liam wiped his eyes. "How fucked up is that? After everything he did, I still remember the kid who taught me how to throw a curveball. Who stayed up with me when I had nightmares. Who made me laugh when I was sad. That person doesn't exist anymore," Gerald said. "Maybe he never really existed." I know that. But I can't stop seeing both versions of him, the friend and the monster, and I don't know which one is real." Gerald reached across the table and took his son's hand. "You don't have to go. You don't owe him anything." "It's not about him," Liam said. "It's about Vanessa. About Mom. About Emily. They can't be there, so maybe I should be. Maybe I owe it to them. Or maybe you owe it to yourself to move forward, not to watch someone die. Liam thought about this for a long time. Finally, he made his decision. I'm going. I need to see it end. The execution was scheduled for 9 p.m. Liam arrived at Greensville Correctional Center at 7:30, along with Gerald. D.A. Thornton was there. Detective Brennan. Helena Pritchard. Jonathan Crane. And about a dozen other people whose lives had been touched by Vanessa. They were led to the witness viewing room, a small space with a large window looking into the execution chamber. Rows of plastic chairs faced the window, which was currently covered by a curtain. Liam sat in the front row, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. At 8:45 p.m., the warden entered the witness room and explained the procedure. The execution will be carried out using the electric chair, in accordance with Virginia law and the court's sentencing order. The process typically takes between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. There may be visible physical reactions. If anyone feels they cannot continue watching, you may leave at any time. No one left. At 8:55 p.m., the curtain opened. The execution chamber was stark and clinical. White walls, bright fluorescent lights, and in the center the electric chair itself. It looked ancient and terrifying, made of heavy oak with leather straps and a metal helmet. At exactly 9 p.m., a door opened and Marcus Whitmore was led in. He was wearing a light blue prison uniform, his head freshly shaved for the electrode placement. His hands were cuffed behind his back. He looked small and young and terrified, nothing like the cold, calculating killer from the trial. Four guards guided him to the chair and began strapping him in. Chest strap, arm straps, leg straps. Each one pulled tight and checked twice. Marcus's eyes darted around the room, landing on the witnesses behind the window. He couldn't see them clearly through the one-way glass, but he knew they were there. Liam stared at his former best friend and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No rage. Just a vast, empty numbness. The warden stepped forward with a microphone. Marcus Elijah Whitmore, you have been sentenced to death by the Commonwealth of Virginia for the murder of Vanessa Marie Ashford. Do you have any last words? Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Everyone leaned forward. I'm sorry, Marcus finally said, his voice shaking. To the Ashford family. To Vanessa. I'm sorry for what I did. I was wrong. I was evil. And I deserve this. It was the first time he'd ever expressed genuine remorse. But it was too little too late. I loved you guys, Marcus continued, tears streaming down his face now. Liam, if you're out there, I'm sorry I destroyed your family. I'm sorry I destroyed everything. I wish I could take it back. I wish. That's enough, the warden said firmly. A guard placed a leather hood over Marcus's face, covering his eyes. Another guard positioned the metal helmet with its sponge electrode on his shaved head and secured it with a chin strap. An electrode was attached to his right calf. Marcus was breathing rapidly now, hyperventilating, his chest heaving against the restraints. The warden looked at the executioner, a prison employee whose identity was kept confidential, and nodded. The executioner pressed a button. 2,000 volts of electricity surged through Marcus Whitmore's body. His body went rigid, straining against the leather straps. His hands clenched into fists. Smoke began rising from the electrode points. The smell of burning flesh and hair filled the chamber. 20 seconds. The current was cut. Marcus's body slumped forward, held up only by the straps. The prison doctor stepped forward, checked for a pulse, listened to his heart with a stethoscope. He shook his head. Not dead yet. The executioner pressed the button again. Another surge of electricity. More convulsions. More smoke. The leather straps creaked under the strain. 15 seconds. The current was cut again. The doctor checked again. This time he nodded to the warden. Time of death, 9:03 p.m., the warden announced. Marcus Elijah Whitmore was dead. In the witness room, reactions varied. Helena Pritchard was crying. Jonathan Crane sat stone-faced. Detective Brennan looked satisfied but grim. D.A. Thornton nodded slowly, a job finished. Gerald Ashford closed his eyes and whispered what might have been a prayer. And Liam just stared at Marcus's body, still strapped to that chair, smoke still rising from his head. He waited to feel something. Relief, justice, closure. But there was nothing. Just the same emptiness that had lived in his chest since the day they found Vanessa's body. Because nothing, not the trial, not the conviction, not even this execution, could bring back the people he'd lost. Vanessa was still dead. His mother was still dead. Emily was still dead. And no amount of justice could change that. Liam Ashford stood in front of 3 graves. Vanessa Marie Ashford. 1998 to 2024. Beloved daughter, sister, and friend. Catherine Ann Ashford. 1962 to 2024. Devoted wife and mother. Emily Rose Ashford. 2000 to 2024. Artist, poet, warrior. It was September 15, 2026, exactly 14 months since Vanessa's murder. Liam came here every week, sometimes more. He'd sit on the grass between his mother's and Vanessa's graves and talk to them about his day, about his struggles, about how much he missed them. Today he brought flowers, sunflowers for Vanessa, who'd loved them, roses for his mother, who'd always kept a vase on the kitchen table, and wildflowers for Emily, who'd painted them in her final months. "Hey guys," Liam said softly, arranging the flowers on each grave. "It's been a rough week. Dad's not doing well. He's talking about selling the house, says there are too many memories. I don't blame him. I can barely stand to be there either." The cemetery was quiet except for birds and the distant sound of traffic. "Marcus is gone now," Liam continued. "They executed him 6 months ago. I watched it happen. I don't know what I thought. That it would help, maybe. That it would make things better." He sat down on the grass, his back against Vanessa's headstone. "But it didn't. He's dead and you're still gone, and nothing has changed except now there's one more dead person. One more mother somewhere crying over her child." Liam pulled his knees to his chest, the same position he used to sit in as a kid when he was scared or sad. "I'm so angry," he whispered. "At Marcus, obviously. But also at you, V. I'm angry at you for saying yes when I asked you to help him. I'm angry at you for being too kind, too trusting. I know that's not fair. I know it's not your fault. But I'm still angry." Tears streamed down his face. "And I'm angry at myself for bringing him into our lives. For not seeing what he really was. For being so naive that I thought kindness could fix someone who was fundamentally broken." He wiped his eyes roughly. "The therapist says I need to forgive myself. That I couldn't have known. That I was just trying to help a friend. But how do I forgive myself when 3 people are dead because of a decision I made?" A breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of cut grass and flowers. "Emily asked me before she died if I thought there was a heaven," Liam said. "I told her yes, even though I don't know if I believe it. But I hope I'm right. I hope you're all together somewhere, safe and happy and whole. I hope you're not angry at me." He stood up slowly, his knees aching from sitting on the ground. "I love you guys," he said, touching each headstone in turn. "I'll be back next week." As he walked toward his car, his phone buzzed. A text from his therapist, Dr. Simmons, reminding him about their appointment tomorrow. Liam had been seeing Dr. Simmons twice a week since the execution. They were working on his guilt, his depression, his PTSD. It was slow going, but he was trying. Because giving up, ending his own life, which he'd considered more than once, would mean Marcus Whitmore had won completely. Would mean the Ashford family was entirely destroyed. And Liam refused to give Marcus that satisfaction. He got in his car and drove to his new apartment. A small studio across town, far from the family home and all its ghosts. Gerald had sold the house 2 months ago, unable to bear it anymore. He'd moved to South Carolina to be near his brother, starting over at age 63. Liam had stayed in Richmond, partly because he couldn't bring himself to leave where his family was buried, partly because he didn't know where else to go. He unlocked his apartment door and was greeted by Scout, a 3-year-old rescue dog he'd adopted a month ago. A German Shepherd mix with one floppy ear and soulful brown eyes. Dr. Simmons had suggested a therapy dog. "Something to care for," she'd said. "Something that needs you." Liam had resisted at first. He didn't feel capable of caring for anything or anyone. But then he'd seen Scout at the shelter, sitting quietly in the corner of his kennel while other dogs barked and jumped for attention. The shelter volunteer had told him Scout had been found abandoned on the side of the highway, malnourished and terrified. "He doesn't trust people much," the volunteer had said. "He's been here 6 months. No one wants a dog with issues." Liam had taken him home that day. Now Scout followed Liam everywhere, sleeping by his bed, resting his head on Liam's lap when the nightmares got bad. They were 2 broken souls trying to heal together. "Hey buddy," Liam said, kneeling down to scratch Scout's ears. "Want to go for a walk?" Scout's tail wagged, cautiously at first, then with more enthusiasm. They walked to the park 3 blocks away. It was early evening, the sun setting in brilliant oranges and pinks. Families were out, kids on swings, couples holding hands, people walking dogs and jogging and living normal lives. Liam watched them and felt like an alien. How could they be so carefree when the world was so dark? But then Scout tugged on his leash, pulling him toward a group of kids playing fetch with a golden retriever. Scout wanted to join in. "You want to play?" Liam asked. Scout looked up at him with those big brown eyes, tail wagging. And for just a moment, just a brief, fleeting moment, Liam felt something other than pain. Not happiness exactly, but not the crushing emptiness either. Something like possibility. "Okay," Liam said. "Let's play." The case of Marcus Whitmore had ripple effects far beyond the Ashford family. Timeless threads, though closed, became a symbol. A reminder of how one act of violence can destroy not just a person but everything they'd built. The vintage clothing community, a tight-knit group of shop owners, collectors, and enthusiasts, held a fundraiser in Vanessa's name, raising $150,000 to establish the Vanessa Ashford Memorial Scholarship. It provided financial assistance to young women starting small businesses in Richmond. Helena Pritchard and Jonathan Crane both became vocal advocates for better employee background checks and small business security. They gave talks at business conferences, sharing Vanessa's story as a cautionary tale. "Trust is important," Helena would say, "but so is verification." Vanessa was kind, but she was also naive. She didn't run a background check. She didn't install security cameras until it was too late. She assumed the best of people, and it got her killed. The case also reignited the debate about the death penalty. Opponents used Marcus's age, just 18, as evidence that the death penalty for young offenders was cruel and unusual. His brain wasn't fully developed, activists argued. He couldn't fully understand the consequences of his actions. But supporters pointed to the brutality of the crime, the lack of remorse, the destruction of an entire family. "Some people are beyond rehabilitation," they said. "Some crimes are so heinous that death is the only appropriate punishment." The debate raged on social media, in op-eds, in law school classrooms. Dr. Raymond Pierce, the defense psychologist, wrote a controversial book titled Born to Kill: The Marcus Whitmore Case and the Limits of Rehabilitation. In it, he argued that while Marcus's background contributed to his actions, it didn't excuse them, and that some individuals pose such a danger to society that keeping them alive, even in prison, is unconscionable. The book became a bestseller, though many criticized it as exploitative. True crime podcasts devoted dozens of episodes to the case. YouTube channels analyzed every detail. Netflix approached Liam about a documentary. He refused. "My family's tragedy isn't entertainment," he told them. But the interest persisted. People were fascinated by the story, by the betrayal, the violence, the young killer with dead eyes, the judge who broke down in tears. It had all the elements of a perfect true crime case. Except for the victims. Except for the real, devastating human cost. Vanessa Ashford became, in death, more famous than she'd ever been in life. Her photo appeared in countless articles and videos, always the same image, her smiling in her shop, surrounded by vintage clothes, looking vibrant and alive. People who'd never met her felt like they knew her. They mourned her. They shared her story. And in a strange way that gave Liam some comfort. Vanessa hadn't been forgotten. Her kindness, her warmth, her dreams, they lived on, remembered by thousands of strangers. It didn't bring her back. Nothing could do that. But it meant something. In Charleston, South Carolina, Gerald Ashford tried to rebuild. He'd moved in with his younger brother Frank, a retired electrician who'd been widowed 5 years earlier. The two old men shared a small house near the beach, spending their days fishing, working in the garden, and trying not to think about everything they'd lost. But grief doesn't respect geography. Gerald would wake up at 2 a.m., forgetting for just a moment that Catherine was gone. He'd reach across the bed, expecting to find her there. The empty space where she should have been was a fresh wound every single time. He'd pull out his phone and scroll through photos. Vanessa as a toddler, gap-toothed and giggling. Emily covered in paint, proudly showing off a canvas. Catherine in the kitchen, flour on her nose, laughing at some joke Gerald could no longer remember. And Liam. So many photos of Liam and Marcus together as kids. Gerald had deleted most of them, unable to look at Marcus's face. But some remained, buried in old albums, and he'd stumble across them sometimes. In one photo, Liam and Marcus were about 10 years old, wearing matching Halloween costumes, Batman and Robin. Marcus had his arm around Liam's shoulders, both boys grinning at the camera. Gerald stared at that photo for a long time, trying to reconcile the smiling child with the monster who'd destroyed his family. He couldn't. So he closed the album and put it away. "You doing okay?" Frank asked one morning, finding Gerald sitting on the back porch, staring at the ocean. "No," Gerald said honestly. "But I'm here. I'm breathing. That's something." Frank sat down beside him. You know it's okay to be angry, right? At God, at the universe, at whatever you need to be angry at. I am angry, Gerald said. I'm furious, but I'm also... He struggled to find the words. I'm also grateful for the time I had with them. For every dinner, every laugh, every moment. Because if I focus only on how it ended, I dishonor everything that came before. That's very wise. It's what Catherine would say. Gerald's voice broke. She always found the light in darkness. Even when Emily got sick, even when money was tight, she'd find something to be grateful for. We have each other, she'd say. That's all we need. She sounds like she was an incredible woman. She was. Gerald wiped his eyes. She really was. They sat in silence, watching the waves crash against the shore. I'm thinking about joining a grief support group, Gerald said eventually. There's one that meets at the church down the road. For people who've lost family members to violence. I think that's a good idea. Yeah. I can't do this alone anymore. That Thursday, Gerald attended his first meeting. 8 people sat in a circle in the church basement, ranging in age from 23 to 71. Each one had lost someone, a spouse, a child, a parent, a sibling, to murder, drunk driving, domestic violence, or other violent crimes. When it was Gerald's turn to share, he told Vanessa's story. All of it. The kindness, the betrayal, the murder, the aftermath. By the time he finished, everyone in the circle was crying. A woman named Patricia, who'd lost her son to a gang shooting, reached over and took Gerald's hand. You're not alone, she said softly. We understand. We've all been where you are. And for the first time since Catherine's death, Gerald felt a tiny spark of hope. Not that things would be okay, they wouldn't. Not ever. But that maybe, eventually he could learn to live with the pain instead of drowning in it. Paula Whitmore lasted 6 months after her son's execution. She'd stayed sober through the trial, through the sentencing, through the endless appeals. She'd attended Marcus's execution, watching through tear-blurred eyes as they strapped her baby boy into that chair and killed him. After that, something in her broke beyond repair. She started drinking again. Vodka, mostly because it didn't smell as much. She'd sit in her apartment, the same cramped, smoke-stained place where Marcus had grown up, and drink until she passed out. She lost her housekeeping job. Stopped paying rent. Stopped caring about anything. On September 3, 2026, Paula's landlord found her dead on the bathroom floor. The medical examiner determined she died from a combination of alcohol poisoning and a fall that had caused a subdural hematoma. She'd been lying there for at least 2 days before anyone noticed. She was 44 years old. There was no funeral. No memorial service. Paula had no family except a distant cousin in Ohio who declined to claim the body. She was cremated at county expense, her ashes scattered in a municipal cemetery's common area, the section reserved for indigents and unclaimed remains. In death, Paula Whitmore was as forgotten and alone as she'd been in life. Some people said it was karmic justice. She'd raised a monster after all. She'd failed as a mother. But others, including Liam, surprisingly, felt a deep sadness for her. She was a victim too, Liam told Dr. Simmons during a session. Not of Marcus directly, but of the same cycle of poverty and addiction and trauma that shaped him. She never had a chance and neither did he. Not really. You have a lot of empathy, Dr. Simmons observed. Maybe too much. Maybe that's my problem. Empathy isn't a problem, Liam. It's what makes you human. It's what separated you from Marcus. But it's also what got my sister killed. If I hadn't had so much empathy for Marcus, if I hadn't begged Vanessa to help him, then you wouldn't be you, Dr. Simmons interrupted gently. And the world needs people like you. People who care. People who try to help. What happened to Vanessa wasn't because you had empathy. It was because Marcus didn't. Liam thought about that for a long time. 2 years after Marcus's execution, a documentary titled The Kindness That Killed was released despite Liam's refusal to participate. The filmmakers had interviewed everyone else, Detective Brennan, D.A. Thornton, Helena Pritchard, Jonathan Crane, jurors from the trial, Marcus's public defender, even Father O'Brien, the prison chaplain. They'd obtained court documents, police reports, crime scene photos, and autopsy reports through FOIA requests. And they'd constructed a comprehensive, devastating portrait of the case. The documentary opened with Judge Holloway's breakdown during sentencing, the moment she declared, "You deserve death," and then flashed back to tell the full story chronologically. It was masterfully done, winning several film festival awards and streaming on HBO Max for months. But it was also controversial. The filmmakers had included interviews with death penalty opponents who argued Marcus's age should have precluded execution. They'd shown photos of Marcus as a child, cute, innocent, smiling, juxtaposed with his mugshot to emphasize how young he still looked at 18. "This is propaganda," Gerald Ashford told reporters who asked his opinion. "They're trying to make you feel sorry for the monster who murdered my daughter. But where's the sympathy for Vanessa? Where's the documentary about her dreams, her kindness, the business she built?" In response, an independent filmmaker created a short documentary called Vanessa's Legacy, focusing entirely on who Vanessa was as a person, her passions, her accomplishments, her impact on her community. Interviews with her friends painted a picture of a woman who was funny, generous, driven, and deeply loved. "She saw the best in everyone," one friend said. "That was her gift and her curse." The short documentary went viral, viewed millions of times, and sparked a conversation about how the media often humanizes killers while victims become footnotes. Liam watched both documentaries alone in his apartment, with Scout curled up beside him. When they ended, he felt empty but also strangely grateful. At least now people knew Vanessa as more than just a murder victim. They knew her as a person. That had to count for something. 3 years after Vanessa's death, Liam Ashford was still broken, but he was learning to function with the broken pieces. He'd finished his associate's degree in business management, taking online classes from his apartment while Scout lay at his feet. He'd gotten a job as an assistant manager at a nonprofit that provided job training to formerly incarcerated people, a choice that surprised everyone, including himself. "Why would you want to help criminals?" his father asked during a phone call. "Because not everyone who makes mistakes is Marcus," Liam replied. "Some people deserve second chances. And maybe helping them is how I honor what Vanessa tried to do." It wasn't easy work. Liam struggled with trust issues, with seeing potential danger in everyone. But his therapist helped him develop tools to manage his anxiety and hypervigilance. He also started attending a support group for family members of murder victims. Like his father's group in Charleston, it was a circle of people who understood the specific kind of grief and trauma that comes from losing someone to violence. "I'm Liam," he said at his first meeting. "My sister Vanessa was murdered 3 years ago by someone we trusted. Someone I brought into her life." "Welcome, Liam," the group leader said. "You're safe here." And slowly, painfully, Liam began to heal. Not in a linear way. There were setbacks. Days when he couldn't get out of bed. Nights when the nightmares were so vivid he woke up screaming, convinced he could smell blood. But there were also good days. Days when he laughed at something Scout did. Days when he helped a program participant land their first job and saw their face light up with hope. Days when he called his father and they talked about happy memories instead of dwelling on the tragedy. One spring afternoon, 4 years after Vanessa's death, Liam did something he hadn't done in years. He went on a date. Her name was Maya, a social worker he'd met at a nonprofit networking event. She was beautiful, smart, funny, and most importantly, she knew about his past and didn't run away. They went to a coffee shop, not the one that had replaced Timeless Threads, but a different one across town. Liam was nervous, stumbling over his words, spilling his coffee. Maya laughed, not at him but with him, and touched his hand gently. "Relax," she said. "This isn't an interview. We're just two people having coffee." And somehow that made it easier. They talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. She told him about her work with foster children. He told her about his nonprofit and about Scout. He didn't mention Vanessa until she asked, "Is it okay if we talk about her? Or would you rather not?" Liam thought about it. "It's okay. I like talking about her, actually. It helps keep her alive in a way." So he told Maya about Vanessa, not about her death but about her life. Her laugh, her fashion sense, her terrible singing voice, her ability to haggle at estate sales, her love of old movies. Maya listened, really listened, and when he was done she said, "She sounds like she was an amazing person. I wish I could have met her." "She would have liked you," Liam said. And he meant it. The date ended with a promise to see each other again. And they did. It wasn't a fairy tale. Liam's trauma didn't disappear because he met someone nice. He still had panic attacks. He still cried in the shower. He still visited his family's graves every week. But Maya understood. She gave him space when he needed it and support when he asked for it. She met Scout and instantly fell in love with the anxious dog. 6 months later, when Liam told her he loved her, she said it back without hesitation. "You've been through hell," Maya said, holding his face in her hands. "But you're still here. You're still fighting. You're still choosing to live in love and hope. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." Liam kissed her, tears streaming down his face. I don't feel brave. You don't have to feel it for it to be true. July 15, 2029. 5 years since Vanessa's murder. Liam stood at her grave, now weathered by 5 years of seasons. The sunflowers he'd planted around it were in full bloom, bright and cheerful against the somber gray headstone. Gerald had flown in from Charleston. He stood beside his son, older and grayer but somehow more at peace than he'd been in years. Maya was there too, holding Liam's hand. And so was someone unexpected. Jennifer Holloway, Marcus Whitmore's former public defender. She'd reached out to Liam 6 months earlier, asking if they could meet. He'd been skeptical but curious. They'd had coffee, at a neutral location at Liam's insistence, and she'd said something that surprised him. I think about your sister every day. I dream about her sometimes. I represented the person who killed her and I have to live with that. You were doing your job, Liam had said. I know. But it doesn't make it easier. I've left criminal defense. I couldn't do it anymore after Marcus's case. Now I work with the Innocence Project trying to free people who were wrongly convicted. It's my way of balancing the scales, I guess. That's good, Liam had said. Vanessa would approve of that. Now, at the cemetery, Jennifer laid a single white rose on Vanessa's grave. I'm sorry I couldn't save you, she whispered. But I promise I'll spend the rest of my career making sure other people get justice. They held a small memorial service, just the 4 of them plus Detective Brennan, who'd stayed in touch with Liam over the years. They shared stories about Vanessa. They cried. They laughed at funny memories. And then Liam did something he'd been thinking about for months. He read a letter he'd written to his sister. Dear Vanessa, he began, his voice shaking slightly. It's been 5 years since you left. 5 years of missing you so much it physically hurts. 5 years of wishing I could go back and change everything. He paused, wiping his eyes. For a long time I blamed myself. I thought if I hadn't asked you to help Marcus, you'd still be alive. And that's true in a way. But Dr. Simmons helped me understand that I can't control other people's choices. I chose to help a friend. You chose to be kind. Marcus chose to steal and murder. Only one of those choices was evil. Gerald put a hand on his son's shoulder, squeezing gently. I want you to know that your kindness wasn't wasted, Liam continued. Yes, it got you killed, and that's a tragedy that will never make sense. But your kindness also touched thousands of people over your lifetime. Your shop was more than a business. It was a place where people felt welcome and valued. Your friends still talk about how you made them feel seen. And your family, we carry your love with us every day. He looked up at the sky as if he could somehow see her there. I'm doing okay now, V. Better than okay, actually. I met someone, her name's Maya, and you'd love her. Dad's doing better too. We're both still here, still fighting, still living. And that's thanks to you. Because you taught us how to love, how to care, how to see the good in people. His voice dropped to a whisper. I miss you so much. I miss your laugh. I miss calling you for advice. I miss knowing you're out there in the world, making it better just by existing. But I promise I won't let your death define me. I'll let your life inspire me instead. He folded the letter and placed it on the grave, weighed down by a smooth stone he'd picked up from the beach in Charleston. Rest easy, big sister. You're loved. You're remembered. And you always will be. July 15, 2034. 10 years since Vanessa Ashford's murder. Liam Ashford stood in front of a ribbon, holding oversized scissors. Behind him, a sign read, the Vanessa Ashford Center for Second Chances. It was a job training and community center in downtown Richmond, occupying the building where Timeless Threads had once stood. Liam had spent 3 years fundraising, planning, and building it, a project that had become his life's work. The center provided job training, mental health services, financial literacy classes, and support for people trying to rebuild their lives after incarceration, homelessness, or addiction. My sister believed in second chances, Liam said to the crowd of about 100 people gathered for the grand opening. She believed that kindness could change lives. And she was right, kindness can change lives. It just couldn't save hers. He cut the ribbon to applause. Maya stood beside him, 7 months pregnant with their first child. A daughter they decided to name Catherine Vanessa, after the grandmother and aunt she'd never meet. Gerald was there too, now 72 and walking with a cane, but smiling genuinely for the first time in years. Your mother would be so proud, he told Liam. Your sisters too. Inside the center, Liam had created a small memorial area dedicated to Vanessa. Photos of her in her shop, smiling and vibrant. A plaque that read, Vanessa Marie Ashford 1998 to 2024, kindness is never wasted, even when it costs everything. Beside the photos was a collection of vintage clothing, pieces from Vanessa's personal collection that Liam had kept in storage all these years. They were displayed in glass cases, preserved as a reminder of who she was and what she loved. Visitors to the center would pause at the memorial, reading Vanessa's story, learning about the woman whose tragedy had inspired this place of healing and hope. One of the first people to walk through the doors that day was a young man named David, 23 years old, recently released from prison after serving 5 years for armed robbery. He stopped at Vanessa's memorial and read the plaque carefully. "Is this true?" he asked Liam. "She was killed by someone she was trying to help?" "Yes," Liam said quietly. David was silent for a moment. "And you built this place anyway? To help people like me? People who've done bad things?" "I built this place because not everyone who makes mistakes is beyond redemption," Liam said. "You're not Marcus Whitmore. Most people aren't. Most people deserve a chance to be better." David's eyes filled with tears. "I won't waste it. I promise." "I know you won't." Over the next few months, the center served hundreds of people. Some succeeded. Some relapsed or reoffended. Some disappeared without a trace. But many, many, found genuine second chances. They got jobs. They reconciled with families. They built new lives. And every single one of them learned Vanessa's story. "She died so you could have this opportunity," one counselor told participants. "Don't let her death be meaningless. Make something good come from it." And they tried. They really tried. Catherine Vanessa Ashford, Katie for short, was born on October 3, 2034, weighing 7 pounds 4 ounces. Liam held his daughter in the hospital, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions he couldn't name. Love, fear, hope, grief. "She has Vanessa's eyes," Maya whispered, exhausted but radiant. And she did. Those same bright green eyes that had looked at the world with such kindness and wonder. Liam kissed his daughter's tiny forehead. "Hey Katie, I'm your dad. And I promise, I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to teach you to be kind but also to be careful. To trust but to verify. To help people but not at the expense of your own safety." Maya reached for his hand. "She's going to be okay. We're going to be okay." "I know," Liam said. But part of him was terrified. Because he knew firsthand how quickly everything could be ripped away. As Katie grew, Liam told her stories about her grandmother Catherine, her Aunt Vanessa, and her Aunt Emily. He showed her photos and videos. He took her to the cemetery every year on their birthdays. "Why are they all dead?" Katie asked when she was 5 years old, standing in front of the 3 graves with a handful of dandelions. Liam knelt down to her level. "Because a bad man hurt them." But that's not the important part of their story. The important part is how much they loved, how much they cared, how much light they brought into the world. "Will a bad man hurt me?" Katie asked, her green eyes wide and scared. "Not if I can help it," Liam said fiercely. "But baby, you can't live your life in fear. Your Aunt Vanessa taught me that. You have to be smart, you have to be careful, but you also have to be brave enough to be kind. Like you." "I'm trying to be." Katie nodded seriously, then placed her dandelions on each grave. "I love you, Grandma. I love you, Aunt Vanessa. I love you, Aunt Emily. Even though I never met you." Liam had to turn away so his daughter wouldn't see him crying. Gerald Ashford died peacefully in his sleep on March 22, 2038, at the age of 76. He'd lived 14 years past his wife and daughters. 14 years of grief and healing and learning to find joy again in small moments. In his final years, he'd become a fixture at the Charleston Grief Support Group, mentoring newly bereaved people and sharing his hard-won wisdom. "The pain never goes away," he'd tell them. "But you learn to carry it. You learn to find reasons to keep going. For me, it was my son. My granddaughter. The knowledge that Catherine would want me to live, not just exist." He'd also reconciled with his faith. 4 years after the murders, Gerald had been angry at God. But slowly, with the help of a compassionate priest, he'd found his way back. "I don't understand why God allowed this to happen," Gerald said during one of their talks. "But I also don't understand why flowers bloom or stars shine. Some mysteries are beyond my comprehension. All I can do is trust that there's a greater plan, even when it feels like chaos." When Gerald died, Liam flew to Charleston with Maya and 6-year-old Katie. They held a funeral that was more celebration than mourning. Gerald had left explicit instructions that he wanted people to remember the good times, not dwell on the sad ones. "Dad lived a good life," Liam said in his eulogy. "He loved deeply. He worked hard. He survived unimaginable loss and still found reasons to smile. He was the strongest person I've ever known." Gerald was buried next to his brother Frank in Charleston, per his wishes. But Liam also placed a memorial plaque at the family plot in Richmond, next to Catherine, Vanessa, and Emily. Gerald James Ashford 1962-2038 beloved husband, father, and grandfather reunited with his beloved wife and daughters. Katie placed a toy train on the plaque. Gerald had loved trains and had spent hours building model railroads with her when she visited. Is Grandpa in heaven with the others now? Katie asked. Yes, baby, Liam said. They're all together again. Good. I'm glad they're not lonely anymore. Liam held his daughter close, grateful beyond words for her innocence, her simple faith that things ultimately worked out okay. He hoped she'd never learn otherwise. By 2039, the Vanessa Ashford Center for Second Chances had served over 10,000 people. The success stories were remarkable. Marcus, not that Marcus, a different one, had come to the center at age 19 after spending 3 years in juvenile detention for drug dealing. The center helped him get his GED, trained him in HVAC repair, and connected him with an apprenticeship. Now he owned his own heating and cooling business, employed 6 people, and volunteered as a mentor at the center. Tamara had arrived addicted to heroin, homeless, and estranged from her children. The center provided addiction treatment, job training, and counseling. 3 years later, she was clean, working as a certified nursing assistant, and had regained custody of her 2 daughters. Jordan had been released from prison after serving 12 years for manslaughter. He'd killed a man in a bar fight when he was 22. The center helped him navigate re-entry, taught him construction skills, and supported him through the difficult process of making amends. He now worked for a nonprofit building homes for low-income families. Stories like these filled Liam with a complicated mix of emotions. Pride, satisfaction, but also a deep, aching sadness. Because for every success story he thought about Vanessa. About how she tried to help just one person, and it had cost her everything. Do you ever regret it? Maya asked him one night as they lay in bed. Building the center? Dedicating your life to helping people who've made terrible choices. Liam thought about it carefully. Sometimes, he admitted, sometimes I see someone come through the doors and I think about Marcus. I wonder if they're capable of the same evil. It terrifies me. But you keep doing it anyway. Because Vanessa was right. Kindness can change lives. It changed Marcus's life for 18 years. He had food, shelter, a support system because of our family's kindness. The problem wasn't that we showed him kindness. The problem was that he was broken in a way we couldn't fix. And you think these people aren't? I think most people aren't. Most people, when given a genuine chance, will take it. Marcus was an outlier. A monster. But I can't let one monster prevent me from helping hundreds of people who deserve better. Maya kissed him softly. Your sister would be so proud of you. I hope so. Because I carry her with me every single day. When Katie Ashford turned 13, she did what most teenagers do. She Googled her own name. What she found shattered her innocence forever. Dozens of articles. A documentary. True crime videos. All about her Aunt Vanessa's murder and her father's best friend who'd committed it. She read everything. Watched everything. Learned every horrific detail her parents had carefully shielded her from. The stabbing. The dismemberment. The lies. The 3 deaths that followed. Katie came home from school that day and found Liam in his office at the center. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded, tears streaming down her face. Why didn't you tell me what really happened to Aunt Vanessa? Liam's heart sank. He'd known this day would come eventually. Sit down, sweetheart. Let's talk. I don't want to sit. I want to know why you lied to me. I didn't lie. I didn't tell you everything. You were too young. I'm not too young anymore. Katie threw her phone on the desk. It showed a crime scene photo, one of the less graphic ones but still disturbing. I read what he did to her. I read what he did to Grandma and Aunt Emily too. Liam closed his eyes, fighting back tears. I'm sorry, Katie. I wanted to protect you from this for as long as possible. Well, you failed. She was sobbing now. Everyone at school knows. Someone found the documentary and started sharing it. They were all talking about it, about how your best friend murdered your sister. And I had no idea. I looked like an idiot. Maya appeared in the doorway, having heard the commotion. She started to intervene, but Liam shook his head slightly. This was his conversation to have. You're right, Liam said quietly. We should have told you. I'm sorry. I wanted you to grow up without carrying this darkness. I wanted you to have the childhood I didn't get. Katie's anger deflated into grief. He was really your best friend? Yes. And you brought him to Aunt Vanessa? Yes. Liam's voice cracked. I asked her to help him and she said yes because that's who she was. And it got her killed. That's something I have to live with every single day. Katie looked at her father, really looked at him, and saw the weight he carried, the guilt that never quite left his eyes. Do you blame yourself? She asked softly. Every single day. But I'm learning that blame doesn't change anything. It just keeps you stuck in the past. Katie sat down in the chair across from him. Is that why you built this place? Because you feel guilty? Partly. But also because I believe what Vanessa believed, that people deserve chances. That kindness matters. That one monster shouldn't make us give up on everyone. But what if someone here turns out like Marcus? What if they hurt someone? Then I'll have to live with that too, Liam said honestly. But Katie, you can't live your life paralyzed by fear. You can't stop being kind because sometimes kindness is betrayed. That's letting the monsters win. Katie was quiet for a long moment. The kids at school say you're crazy for helping criminals. They say you're stupid. Maybe I am. But I'd rather be crazy and kind than safe and cold. That's what Aunt Vanessa would say, isn't it? Yes, it is. Katie wiped her eyes. I want to know everything. The whole story. Don't leave anything out because you think I can't handle it. I deserve to know. So Liam told her. Everything. From Marcus's childhood, to the theft, to the confrontation, to the murder and its aftermath. He told her about the trial, the execution, the years of grief and healing. He held nothing back. When he finished, Katie sat in silence for a full 5 minutes. Finally, she said, I'm sorry this happened to you, Dad. To all of you. Thank you, baby. But I'm also glad you didn't let it destroy you. I'm glad you built something good from something horrible. Liam stood and hugged his daughter tightly. I love you so much. And I promise, I will never let anything happen to you. You can't promise that, Katie said, her voice muffled against his chest. Bad things happen. But you can promise to be there when they do. She sounded so much older than 13. Liam realized his daughter had just lost her innocence, just learned that the world was darker and more dangerous than she'd believed. And there was nothing he could do to give it back. July 15, 2044. 20 years since Vanessa Ashford's murder. Liam Ashford was now 42 years old. His hair was starting to gray at the temples. Lines had formed around his eyes, laugh lines now mostly, though some were carved by grief. He stood at Vanessa's grave with his family, Maya, now 41 and still beautiful, Katie, now 18 and about to start college, and their son James, age 7, named after Gerald. The Vanessa Ashford Center had expanded into 3 locations across Virginia. It had been featured in national news, won awards for its innovative programs, and inspired similar centers in other cities. More importantly, it had changed thousands of lives. Detective Sarah Brennan had retired and now volunteered at the center, teaching courses on personal safety and self-advocacy. DA Richard Thornton had also retired and served on the center's board of directors. Even Judge Margaret Holloway, now 86 years old and suffering from dementia, had been brought to the center's anniversary celebration the week before. She'd looked around with confused eyes and asked, Is Vanessa here? She's here in spirit, Liam had told her gently. The judge had smiled. Good. She should see this. She should see what her kindness created. Now at the cemetery, Liam placed flowers on all 4 graves, Vanessa, Catherine, Emily, and Gerald. Katie, now a young woman who looked startlingly like Vanessa, placed a small bouquet of wildflowers on Emily's grave. I wish I'd known them, Katie said softly. They would have loved you, Liam replied. Vanessa would have spoiled you rotten. Emily would have taught you to paint. Mom would have made you her famous lasagna every Sunday. And Dad would have built model trains with you for hours. Tell me a story about them, James piped up. A happy one. So Liam told them about the time Vanessa had tried to teach him to dance before his 8th grade formal and they'd both ended up falling over the coffee table, laughing so hard they cried. He told them about how Emily used to paint portraits of their dog and hang them around the house like they lived in a museum. He told them about how Catherine could tell when someone was lying just by looking at them, a skill Liam had apparently inherited. He told them about how Gerald had once driven through a snowstorm to pick up Liam from a party where he felt uncomfortable, never once complaining. They sound amazing, James said. They were. They really were. As they walked back to the car, Katie slipped her hand into her father's. Dad? I've been thinking about what I want to study in college. Yeah. I want to be a therapist. Or maybe a social worker. I want to help people the way you do. The way Aunt Vanessa tried to. Liam stopped walking and turned to face his daughter. Are you sure? It's hard work. Emotionally draining. And sometimes people will disappoint you. I know. But someone has to do it. And if I don't, if people like me don't, then the monsters win. Right. Liam felt tears prick his eyes. Right. Besides, Katie added with a small smile, I figure I have pretty good genes for this kind of work. Kindness must run in the family. It does, Liam agreed. Along with stubbornness, apparently. They laughed, a real, genuine laugh that echoed through the cemetery. Somewhere, Liam thought Vanessa was smiling. 20 years. 7,300 days since Vanessa Ashford showed kindness to the wrong person. In that time, Liam Ashford had built a life from the ruins. He'd found love, raised children, created something meaningful from meaningless tragedy. But the pain never fully went away. Some nights, Liam still woke up from nightmares, visions of Vanessa calling out for help while he stood frozen, unable to save her. Visions of Marcus's cold eyes. Visions of his mother collapsing. Visions of Emily dying heartbroken. On those nights, Maya would hold him and remind him, you survived. That matters. And Scout, now 15 years old, gray-muzzled and arthritic but still devoted, would rest his head on Liam's lap, offering silent comfort. The question Liam had asked himself 1,000 times over 20 years was this: was Vanessa wrong to be kind? Should she have said no when he asked her to help Marcus? Should she have been more suspicious, less trusting, harder? The answer, Liam had finally concluded, was no. Vanessa's kindness hadn't killed her. Marcus's evil had killed her. And if Liam let Marcus's evil prevent him from being kind, if he let one monster's actions poison his view of all humanity, then Marcus would have destroyed not just Vanessa, but everything she stood for. So Liam chose differently. He chose to help people even when it scared him. He chose to trust even when trust had been betrayed. He chose to believe in second chances, even though he'd seen firsthand what happened when second chances went wrong. Because the alternative, living in fear, closing his heart, seeing potential monsters in everyone, was a different kind of death. And Liam had already lost enough. He'd lost his sister, his mother, his second sister, his father. But he refused to lose himself. 20 years after Vanessa Ashford's murder, her brother stood in the center that bore her name, surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by the opportunity she believed everyone deserved. On the wall, in elegant script, was a quote Liam had commissioned. Kindness is an act of courage. It requires us to be vulnerable, to trust, to believe in the possibility of good even in a world that has shown us evil. Be brave enough to be kind. Below it, Vanessa's photo, smiling, radiant, forever 26. And below that, a list of names. Thousands of names. Every person the center had helped over 20 years. Every life touched by Vanessa's legacy. Every reason why her death, however tragic, however senseless, hadn't been in vain. Liam touched the photo gently as he did every day before leaving work. Thank you, V, he whispered, for teaching me how to live. For showing me that kindness isn't weakness. For proving that even when it costs everything, it's still worth it. He walked out into the summer evening where Maya and Katie and James were waiting in the car. His family. His reason to keep going. Behind him, the center's lights glowed warm and welcoming. Inside, 32 people were in classes learning job skills, getting counseling, finding hope. Tomorrow more would come. And the day after that. And the day after that. Because Vanessa Ashford's kindness hadn't died with her. It had multiplied, rippling outward in ways she never could have imagined. And 20 years later, it was still changing the world, one second chance at a time. Thank you for watching Dark Echoes Crime. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing, leaving a comment about how you process grief or practice kindness despite life's dangers, and sharing this with someone who needs to hear Vanessa's story. We tell these stories not to glorify violence, but to honor victims and remind ourselves of our shared humanity, even in our darkest moments. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind, and remember, the light always matters even when surrounded by darkness.